Chapter 154. They spent a few days abroad with the two dogs. After confirming that everything was peaceful, they finally decided to take a flight back to China. The mission this time was indeed very successful, but after all, it was a secretive matter and could not be widely publicized. Therefore, the higher-ups could not publicly reward Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai for their contributions. They only secretly gave them a raise. They had been on the job for less than a year, but their salary was higher than that of the trainers. Trainers, it seems that my dream of eating dogs is just around the corner. As a meticulous trainer, Yu Xiao felt that for dogs, salaries and medals were all empty. Only a holiday was a spiritual thing. Dan Dan and Ping had not seen each other for a long time. Yu Xiao fought for them to take a week off so that the young couple could be intimate. Feng Xiao readily agreed. I'll give you a holiday too. Rest well at home. No need. Yu Xiao was very honest. I didn't do anything this time. I just served them food and bathed. That's true. Feng Xiao thought about it and could not help but laugh and tease him. Have you noticed that ever since Ping, and Dan Dan appeared, you've been winning without doing anything? Yu Xiao's former elite aura was gone. The ones who charged into battle were the police dogs under his command. Now he was at most a logistician. Who would have thought? Yu Xiao's own expression was also very interesting. Indeed, he was not used to being idle these days. It was as if he had not been on the job. He felt a little unbalanced. It's okay. I think this is not bad. Or are you bored and want to go out on your own? Feng Xiao asked casually, but his tight jawline revealed the truth that he was not casual. No. Yu Xiao put his arm around his good friend's shoulder and thought, I'll stick to you. Aren't we good partners? Don't forget to take me with you wherever you go. Feng Xiao smiled and felt that Yu Xiao's words of love were very flirtatious. He nodded with a smile and hoped that the other party would never forget. Okay, I'll take them back to rest. Yu Xiao quickly withdrew his hand and said in his heart, Stop with the formalities. Hold it in. The other party said, Okay, I'll go too. Yu Xiao's face changed, as if he was hiding something. He touched his face and said, Why don't you not come? If you want to come tomorrow. Not today. In short, he did not want Feng Xiao to get off work with him. Feng Xiao raised his eyebrows in dissatisfaction. Why not? I want some private space. Yu Xiao said after thinking for a long time. Although it wasn't his personal space, it was Ping, and Dan Dan's private space. Feng Xiao still did not know about that matter. What if he could not accept it? The instructor was extremely conflicted. Personal space, my ass. Do you have any personal space? Feng Xiao's tone was full of righteousness. Don't forget that he was now the boss. If he said no, then no. Yu Xiao, good fellow, my savage chief. Since Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai had just returned to China, they were still jet-lagged. When the poop picker and the instructor were dawdling, they were sleeping in the back seat. When the two humans went to bed at night, they were full of energy and rummaged around the house. The noise was so loud that Yu Xiao and Feng Xiao could not fall asleep. Of course, without the noise, the two of them probably could not fall asleep. The two of them opened the door together and looked at each other. Then they laughed dryly. You were also woken up? Yes. I'll get them something to eat. You go back to sleep, Yu Xiao said quickly. They should have found it by themselves. Why don't we not disturb them? At this moment, Feng Xiao's mind was filled with the image of the two dogs cuddling together. He felt that Yu Xiao should know. He should have seen it that night. Later on, he did not seem to be disgusted. Was it because Ping and Dan Dan were animals? Then what about him? Disturb? Yu Xiao stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Feng Xiao. Why would this person use this word? Unless he knew something. Could it be that he covered his eyes a little too late that night and actually saw it? Under Yu Xiao's gaze, Feng Xiao felt his ears burning. He could not help but cough softly. Brother Xiao, they are a couple. Yu Xiao widened his eyes. Wow, this person really knew. But it seems like you don't want me to know. Feng Xiao looked confused. Why? He had thought about this question many times, but he could not figure it out. Today, he finally could not help but ask Yu Xiao. Looking carefully at Feng Xiao's expression, other than confusion, there was no disgust. Yu Xiao said, I'm just afraid that their behavior will scare you. Feng Xiao laughed. No, I wish them well. That's good. The two of them laughed and looked at each other foolishly. Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai, who were rummaging in the living room, heard their conversation clearly. It turned out that the poop picker also knew about it. That was great. Were they a couple? Ao Daisai stole food from home to feed the little bear and then let the other party sleep in his arms while he was awake like a guardian. Jet lag seemed to be an excuse, but in fact, only Ao Daisai was jet-lagged. Xiao Qixi felt sleepy after eating. He curled up in his partner's arms and exclaimed when he heard that. The poop picker and the trainer? Let's put it this way. There was a period of time when Xiao Qixi felt that they were, but sometimes he was not sure. He felt that although the poop picker and the trainer had feelings for each other, they did not have the urge to be together. More than friends, but not lovers. This was the most appropriate sentence to describe them. When neither of them wanted to take that step, they would never be able to become that kind of relationship. Ao Daisai seemed to understand and made a casual sound. He did not have much desire to explore the emotional relationships of humans. He just vaguely felt that the little bear's inner self always gave him a sense of overlap with humans. It seemed that compared to polar bears and lions, the other party's way of thinking was more similar to that of humans. Yulishanda did not necessarily understand polar bears and lions very well, but Ao Daisai felt that Yulishanda definitely understood humans very well. After 2 days of jet lag, Xiao Qixi was finally no longer sleepy. He finally had the energy to welcome Ao Daisai and enjoy a dripping and carefree intimacy. In this kind of weather, of course, they would do it indoors. The two humans who lived with them consciously left to create some space for them to be alone. Xiao Qixi, thank you. To be honest, Ao Daisai was quite abstinent. He did not ask for it often, but every time he did it, it was always of high quality. Xiao Qixi, who was intimate with him, would experience what it meant to have a blank mind. This was not surprising. Ao Daisai had been dealing with Yulishanda for so many years. He already knew what to do to please her to a greater extent. To exaggerate, it was almost instinctive. Yes, this guy was very skilled. Xiao Qixi reflected on himself in embarrassment and anger. On the road of pleasing his partner, he also had to work hard. However, every time he wanted to work hard, Ao Daisai would turn the tables and completely suppress him. There was no room for him to perform at all. Therefore, he could not be blamed for lying down. At noon, the weather warmed up a little. The poop picker and the others had not returned yet. Xiao Qixi lay down in despair. After being intimate, the satisfied beast pressed her head on his body and enjoyed a beautiful afternoon nap. However, Xiao Qixi knew that Ao Daisai was not completely asleep. As long as he moved a little, the other party would wake up. He was very vigilant. The after effects of being separated for nearly 10 days gradually weakened after a week of inseparable activities. Ao Daisai would not wake up in the middle of the night anymore. Xiao Qixi had always been distressed about this. He could imagine that the other party did not sleep well overseas. Poor Ao Daisai. He had completed such an important mission in secret. Even though he hadn't announced it publicly, he knew everything that he needed to know. As the saying goes, people are afraid of being famous, and pigs are afraid of being fat. Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai were already very famous. Now all kinds of difficult and old cases swarmed in. As their trainer, Yu Xiao put on a painful mask. From today onwards, he would learn to say no. As the saying goes, good steel should be used on the blade. In the future, he would not accept any task that other police dogs could do for him. If he accepted any task, then Ping, Un, and Dan Dan would not need to rest anymore. Boss Egg's reaction to the news was, "Little you, you did well. I will consider giving you some of my pension in the future." On a peaceful night, the family of four watched the international news while having dinner. The news reported that Mr. Zen had recently announced his resignation from his family's company and gave the position of CEO to a younger manager. Xiao Qixi suddenly forgot to eat. He stared blankly at Zent on the TV screen. After being separated for nearly half a month, the gauze on Zent's hand had been removed. His injury seemed to have recovered. That was good. However, there was no smile on his face. Was he not happy? As an animal, Xiao Qishi never thought that he would have such a big impact on a human's heart. Just like Ao Daisai said, he was just a pet to humans. Eat quickly. It was not right to watch TV and forget to eat. Ao Daisai glanced at him. Xiao Qishi's attention was on Zent. He did not seem to have heard the reminder. He was still staring at the TV screen. Ao Daisai was completely ignored by the little cutie. He raised his eyebrows slightly and did not bother to say anything else. He chose to press the remote control with his paw and turned off the TV. Now, he could finally eat in peace. Xiao Qishi, the poop picker and trainer, they were so engrossed in watching the TV. How could he turn it off just like that? The problem was that no one dared to turn it on again. Pinyin was quite authoritative in this house. Also, Xiao Qishi probably knew why Ao Daisai turned off the TV. He felt a little guilty. Eat, eat, eat. Dan, eat properly. The trainer and poop picker also probably knew that it was because Dan was only focused on watching TV and not eating. That was why Pinyin turned off the TV. This time, they were implicated by Dan. After a few days, new news came. Mr. Zent, who had just resigned, came to China. As soon as such a big shot entered the country, almost all the relevant departments received the news. The National Security Bureau immediately became nervous. What was the meaning of this? Was he going to ask for an explanation? This was undoubtedly a very unwise thing to do. Later, they found out that the other party did not do anything. Instead, he went directly to the branch where Dan worked. Comrade Dan, danger! They hurriedly called Officer Yu Xiao and asked him to take the dog out and hide. However, Yu Xiao was worried about Feng Xiao facing Zent alone. In his mind, Zent was a scheming and powerful person who was difficult to deal with. He could not let his guard down. Xiao Qishi came back from her routine patrol and saw Zent sitting in the poop picker's office. For a moment, she forgot to react. It was Zent. Little Bear was very surprised. His tail involuntarily wagged and his head tilted. The handsome blonde European man in the seat was flipping through a magazine. He did not understand the Chinese words, so he was only looking at pictures. Currently, Zent's gaze had been fixed on a photo for a long time. It was a photo of Alexander wearing a big red flower when he had performed a meritorious deed. It was so beautiful. Zent was sincerely proud of him. After a long time, he finally noticed that someone was looking at him. He raised his head and saw Yolashanda in a police dog uniform looking at him with his head tilted. Yolashanda's familiar round eyes were full of surprise. Seeing this, Zent could not help but smile even more happily than he had at the press conference. Is this how you usually look at work? Center closed the magazine and sized up the man. You don't look bad. Xiao Qishi's expression. Calm down. Isn't it just Zent flying over to look for the dog? Xiao Qishi's heart. Zent was talking to him with a smile. He was not angry. Boo-hoo. What kind of feeling was this? Xiao Qishi could not hold it in anymore. With a whimper, he pounced on him and excitedly washed his face. No, oh no. Mr. Zent, who had been sitting elegantly, instantly became embarrassed. His hair and clothes were messy, and he looked like a prey that had been bullied. Yolashanda. He was angry and amused at the same time. Seriously. However, he seemed to have accepted this crazy reunion ceremony. Forget it. After all, dogs could not speak. They could only use this kind of behavior to express their happiness. The onlookers were dumbfounded. For a moment, countless questions surged in their minds. Why was Dan so intimate with Mr. Zent? Who was Yolashanda? However, the most important thing now was to tear Dan, the little hooligan, off Mr. Zent. They could not offend the distinguished guest. Dan, come down, the trainer said sternly. Ao Daisai also saw Xiao Qishi's enthusiasm for Mr. Zent. He was speechless. He adhered to his usual principle of directly using his hands. No, using his mouth. He walked forward and bit Zent's uniform, pulling him off the human's body. Xiao Qishi felt the world spinning around her, as well as a sudden, chilling sense of danger. She finally regained her rationality from her excitement and felt a tinge of fear. Oh no, Ao Daisai was jealous. Otherwise, the other party would have thrown him to the ground instead of still holding him in his mouth and depriving him of his freedom of movement. The crying cat emoji filled Xiao Qishi's imagination. He quickly explained, "This is a method to confuse the enemy." Ao Dai Sai. "Oh, is that so?" Xiao Qishi, "Yes. Otis, your enemy is my enemy. I'll bite him to death. What do you think?" In a place where Little Bear could not see, his boyfriend showed his fangs and his eyes were cold as if he was telling the truth. So Little Bear did not dare to talk nonsense. Of course, he said the truth. "No?" Ao Dai Sai continued to tease him. "Didn't you say it was an enemy?" Xiao Qi, who was in the air with his 4 paws, chose his words carefully. "We are friends." "My friend is your friend." Ouch! Before he could finish, Ao Dai Sai threw him to the ground. It did not hurt, but he had to pretend to be in pain. He even shamelessly rolled on the ground twice. What happened to Dan Dan? This movement at least meant that the paw was broken. The human's attention was immediately focused, including Mr. Zent. He was sure that he did not see wrongly. The cold-looking German shepherd did not seem to be very friendly to Yolashanda. Mr. Zent said in a low voice, "Mr. Policeman, that German shepherd looks very violent. He pulled Yolashanda off my body and threw him to the ground. Didn't you see that?" The poop picker and the trainer were speechless. They did see it, but Dan Dan was pretending. How could Ping bully Dan Dan? He was always in the palm of his hand and afraid that he would fly away. He gave Dan Dan all the delicious and fun things. "It seems that you know what's going on, but you don't want to control it?" Mr. Zent was very angry. If that was the case, he would definitely do his best to take Yolashanda away. "No, Mr. Zent, you misunderstood." Feng Xiao could not stand this kind of injustice. They were very good to the dog. They are a couple. This is a couple playing around. "Mr. Zent? Question mark. The author has something to say. Come on." Chapter 155. Zent subconsciously looked at the other dog. His expression was colorful. The first thought that came to his mind was, is that a female? Isn't she too tall and cold? She exudes a masculine aura. Thus, Zent immediately overturned this assumption. He had clearly seen the other party's gender. There was no doubt that it was male, just like Yolashanda. However, the person in charge here said that they were a couple. All right, there are also gay people in the animal world. Mr. Zent, who had grown up overseas, was used to it. However, it was very strange that it happened to Yolashanda. No matter how he looked at it, Yolashanda was the wife. In Zent's heart, Yolashanda was gentle and strong. She was even someone he could rely on. His feelings were too complicated. Feng Xiao felt that he was wrong. He shouldn't have overestimated his foreign friend's ability to accept things. If he had known, he wouldn't have told him about Ping and Dan Dan's adulterous relationship. "Oh no, love. So you used Yolashanda's partner to threaten him and make him help you complete your undercover mission." Zent's thoughts went round and round. In the end, this was the only thing that made him angry. What? The young bureau chief was wronged again. He hurriedly cleared himself of suspicion. "Mr. Zent, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. We didn't threaten Dan Dan, who is Yolashanda. Sigh, this name is quite nice. His partner is also very powerful, okay? They're all elites in our country and have helped us complete many important missions." "I know." Zent's tone was stiff. Yolashanda being oppressed was equivalent to him being oppressed. He could empathize with her. The bureau chief thought to himself, what do you know? The other members in the office watched the two of them quarrel with great interest. So what exactly was this Mr. Zent here for? Actually, even if he didn't say it, Feng Xiao already knew. He could already tell that Yolashanda. Oh no, Dan Dan and Vincent had a special relationship. It wasn't like their relationship with Dan Dan, nor was it like a pure master-pet relationship. They were more like friends. It could only be said that Dan Dan was so charming that even Vincent liked him deeply and even proposed to adopt a retired police dog. The other party could start lining up to fight for it from now on. If there's anything they needed, they could just state it. Chief Feng felt like he had suddenly been hit by a mountain of gold. It hurt a little, but it felt a little good. But could he agree to this condition? Of course, he couldn't agree. He chuckled and said, "Sure, but they can only retire in China. If you don't mind settling down in China." You can adopt them. What a joke. How could Zint settle down in China? Deal. Vincent nodded. He didn't expect things to go so smoothly, but more problems followed. It was said that it was quite troublesome to buy property in China, especially when there were many restrictions on purchase. Of course, he could leave it all to Dai Wei to deal with, but Dai Wei was now assisting Governor Rang and couldn't take care of him. Chief Feng. Yu Xiao's English wasn't that good, so he couldn't help but ask curiously, "What are you talking about?" Xiao Qishi thought in a daze. "Oh, he didn't say anything. He just gave your precious dog away." Chief Feng, crying cat head. JPG, Mr. Zint, I was just talking nonsense. I can't decide where these two police dogs go. Really? Vincent had a suspicion that he had been acted out. Yes. Feng Xiao was resolute. Mr. Zint offered a series of generous conditions and said sincerely, "You can't do that." The conditions were very generous. Even Chief Feng, who had seen the world, couldn't refuse because they were really generous. He could only rub his hands and apologize to Yu Xiao. Okay. Anyway, he had to get the benefits first. What was adoption? Ao Daisai was confused by the human conversation. Someone would take care of them when they couldn't move after retirement. Xiao Qishi, of course, wanted to retire in a big villa where there was delicious food and fun. But he didn't despise the poor. Even if he wasn't adopted by Zint, it didn't matter. A farm was good too. Do you want to live with this person? Ao Daisai's tone was full of danger. Of course, that was good too. Xiao Qishi rubbed his hands. Compared to Zint, who was powerful and influential, he could live with him and eat whatever he wanted. Do you like him that much? Ao Daisai's tone was even more dangerous, and his fangs quietly moved closer to Xiao Qishi's neck. This was definitely a threat. Well, it's just a friend's affection, really. Why do you think I like this person? Xiao Qishi was numb. When he took a shower with his trainer, he didn't see Ao Daisai get angry. Of course, there was a reason for that. Ao Daisai didn't show it, but he had already begun to suspect that Yelishanda had a close relationship with humans. Obviously, Zint and the poop picker had already discussed it. The only one who had a problem with this was Ao Daisai. Yu Xiao, am I not human? When he found out that Feng Xiao had promised his dog to a former mafia heir, his mentality collapsed. If this person wasn't Feng Xiao, he would have already started to cause trouble in the branch. It's only a temporary agreement. It depends on Dan Dan's choice, Feng Xiao said. If Dan Dan doesn't choose him, can you force him? Yu Xiao pointed at the dog that was gnawing on bones after work. Do you need to force him to be so affectionate today? Feng Xiao's face was cold. Then it's your problem. Yelishanda looked up. Yes, what's wrong with the dog? Ao Daisai and Yu Xiao. The arrival of Zint caused countless family conflicts. Ring, who was far away in another country, called Mr. Zint after work, but the other party didn't answer. He could only edit a voice message. Mr. Zint, this is Ring. How are you in China? I'm sorry to interrupt your trip, but I still have some questions for you regarding work. If you have time, I hope you can call back. That cold and dignified voice could ease the pressure of a new official. Zint, who didn't answer the phone, was personally dealing with some problems. For him, it was very complicated, but at the same time, it was a very novel experience. It had never happened before. Late at night, in the hotel room, Zint finally had time to return Rang's call. What's the problem? Rang told him the truth. In fact, he could solve it himself. This reason was just an excuse to talk to Mr. Zint. Hearing the other side slowly instilling experience into him, the corners of Rang's lips curled up slightly. The surroundings were very quiet, so Mr. Zint was in a sealed environment. The biggest possibility was that he was in a hotel. Maybe he had already showered and was wearing a bathrobe. Zint spoke for a few minutes, then asked, "Do you understand?" "I understand, sir," Rang said calmly. Okay. Zint was quite satisfied with Rang, although he had a lot of questions. After all, he had just taken over. After so many years in this position, Zint understood the feeling of being surrounded on all sides. Are you tired? Rang's concern came from the other end of the phone. I really hope to be by your side and share the trivialities of life with you. Zint, you're sharing my burden now. Rang sighed. That's different. After hanging up, Zint fell into a rare state of deep thought outside of work. Indeed, only people with nothing to do would have the leisure to care about other people's affairs. For example, since Rang was interested in studying housekeeping, he must be a person full of dedication and service. To be honest, Zen had a good impression of this kind of person, which was why he had decided to give the opportunity to Rang. Rang gave him the feeling that Rang was a service provider. If he needed it, Rang would give it to him without reservation. There was actually such a person in the world. Zent felt a little pity for Rang. Actually, there was no need. After all, Rang had his own reasons for doing this. After he became familiar with Dai Wei, he casually asked about Mr. Zent's love life. Mr. Zent went to China to relax, right? I feel that he's not in a good mood recently. Yes, Dai Wei did not say much. Love is really a nerve-wracking thing. Rang smiled as if he understood. Dai Wei? Question mark. Dai Wei could not help but laugh. He had obviously misunderstood, but he did not dare to say much. Yilashanda was involved in sensitive matters. Rang asked, "Is he very outstanding?" Ah, how should he answer this question? Dai Wei thought for a moment and described carefully. Yes, he's wild and handsome, but his words and actions are very warm. He's very considerate towards Mr. Zent. Yeah, he's someone that all of us like. That's right. If he was not outstanding, how could he gain Mr. Zent's favor? But to gain everyone's favor? This evaluation was too extravagant. Rang felt sour in his heart and almost could not maintain the smile on his face. Then why did he leave? I'm not too sure. Dai Wei remembered Mr. Zent saying, "It seems that it's because they're on different sides. It's fated that they can't live together." That's great, Rang thought to himself. His next goal was to quickly finish this damned work and then go to China to destroy other people's relationships. Zent rented a yard near the farm and hired some workers to help him renovate the yard to his liking. On the morning of the weekend, the family of 4 on the farm listened to the clanking sounds of the drilling and cutting machines next door. They were numb. Do you have any manners? Don't you know that work is not allowed on weekends? Yilashanda thought to himself, that's right. Until he smelled Zent's scent, he immediately became a famous double standard. It was good to start work early in the morning. If they did not hurry up and start work, the plum rain season would be coming soon. It would not be good if the foreigners had nowhere to stay. Ao Daisai, I'll go out for a run. Xiao Qishi's heart was restless. You want to go and play with Zent? Ao Daisai immediately bit the leather choker on his neck. His attitude was very obvious. He would not let him go, not even to the toilet. Xiao Qishi stared at him. Ao Daisai could not be bothered with him. He had just been there an hour ago. There was no way he wanted to go to the toilet so soon. Are you sick? At first, Xiao Qishi did not understand the meaning of this question. Later, he understood. Cough. Frequent and urgent urination was a kind of illness. He had talked to Ao Daisai about it before. He drank too much water in the morning. Xiao Qishi still wanted to fight for it. Maybe Ao Daisai would take pity on him and let him go. Ao Daisai's eyes turned into a half-smile. Just as Xiao Qishi thought that he was going to expose his lie, Ao Daisai relented. Go. He was so easy to talk to that it made Xiao Qishi feel guilty. Okay, actually, I'm going to play with Zent. Xiao Qishi raised his paw and immediately promised. But don't worry, I have nothing to do with him. We're just friends. Ao Daisai blinked. You only have half an hour. Are you sure you want to continue talking nonsense with me? Xiao Qishi was stunned. Ao Daisai seemed very happy. He leaned closer. I don't mind. Xiao Qishi's guilty feeling immediately disappeared. There was a time limit. So, he cursed Ao Daisai as he ran to Zent's house, which was being renovated. The human was wearing casual clothes. His back was straight and reserved. Among the crowd, how is there a word to describe him? He was like a crane among chickens. In terms of human aesthetics, Zent was the best-looking person Xiao Qishi had ever seen. Woof! Yilashanda barked softly. When the man turned his head, he saw Zent squatting at the door. The handsome human's eyes shone with surprise, as if he hadn't expected to see Zent here. Hey, don't you have to work today? Zent saw that Yilashanda wasn't wearing a uniform. Yes, it was the weekend. Xiao Qishi stood up and wagged his tail briskly. Oh, it's the weekend. Zent remembered. When he touched Yulashanda's head, he was in a good mood. Did you see? I bought a house here. After you retire, we can live here. Yulashanda was stunned. He hadn't expected Zent to do this for him. Was he serious about adopting a retired police dog? He had thought it was just a casual remark. Oh, woo, that was great. Yulashanda was at the same height as Zent when he was squatting. He buried his head in Zent's arms and whined. Zent was great. Xiao Qishi had been conflicted. If Zent really wanted to adopt him, how should he choose between Zent and the poop shoveler? But now they were neighbors. It wouldn't make a difference who adopted him. Zent hugged Yulashanda for a while. His heart was filled with warm energy, and he felt very calm. He always felt this happy when he was with Yulashanda. While hugging, Zent saw another wolf dog walk over slowly. He had to admit that the dog's tall figure and amber eyes were very oppressive. It made him feel like he was being stared at by a wild beast. Although the dog didn't have any bad intentions, it just had a faint dislike. Oh, that was normal. If this was really Yulashanda's partner, it was normal for the dog to hate all males who got close to Yulashanda. The problem was that Zent felt strange being treated as a love rival by a dog. He wanted to say, "Hey, Yulashanda and I are just friends." Ao Daisai came to their side and stood there for a while without saying anything. Just as Zent was considering whether to remind Yulashanda, who was rubbing around in his arms, the other party moved. Just like the first time they met, he picked up Yulashanda's choker again and pulled Yulashanda's head out of his arms. Xiao Qishi, who was enjoying the handsome man's hug, thought, "Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing?" Ao Daisai looked at Zent and then at the house that was being renovated. For the first time in his life, he regretted that he couldn't speak. Recently, he had been free for too long. He wanted to go on a mission. Xiao Qishi grumbled unhappily. "It hasn't even been half an hour." Ao Daisai thought, "Yes, so I'm not here to take you back. I'm here to join you." Xiao Qishi thought, "The author has something to say. This unit is about to end. There are 2 or 3 more chapters. The next unit is Peacock." Chapter 156. The atmosphere between the 2 wolfhounds and the single person was strange. "Hello, I am Yulashanda's friend, Vincent." Vincent was the first to break the silence. He extended his friendly hand to the majestic wolfhound. He hoped to erase the negative impression the other party had of him. Ao Daisai sized up the young human for a moment. Judging from a beast's sense of beauty, the human's appearance was not good. It was even a little strange. However, this person did not have a mixed aura. Even Ao Daisai could not find any flaws that made him dislike him. The only flaw was that little bear liked to stick to him. Everyone liked pure and beautiful things. However, Ao Daisai admitted that he was narrow-minded and liked to be jealous. Even if he understood why Yulashanda liked Vincent, which was just because Vincent was comfortable and sincere, he was still unhappy. Friends? In the past, Little Bear did not seem to have a pure friend. He only had toys that could not speak. The Yuanzi and the rest were not Yulashanda's friends. They were relatives. Carrie and the rest were not considered friends either. Carrie and the rest were Ao Daisai's companions first, then Yulashanda's companions. Perhaps Yulashanda needed a friend of his own. After thinking for a moment, Ao Daisai finally extended his paw and placed it in Vincent's palm. This was the first time Little Bear had introduced him to a friend. Other than the jealousy between couples, he was also very happy. Vincent held the paw that felt similar to Yulashanda's and smiled unconsciously. To be honest, he felt flattered. He thought that this majestic wolfhound would ignore him. Woof woof. Xiao Qishi was also happy. "He is Ao Daisai. He is my dear boyfriend. Nice to meet you." Vincent was polite. Xiao Qishi thought, "We are also very happy to meet you." The tense atmosphere softened because of this handshake. Then they went to see Vincent's house. They would not make too many changes, just some soft decorations. This way they could move in quickly. Because no one had lived here for a long time, there were some small animals hiding around, such as mice and cockroaches. Xiao Qishi volunteered. "Ao Daisai, why don't we help Sun clean up the rats around him?" Ao Daisai complained in her heart. "Little darling, can't you do some activities in the mortal realm? Catching rats?" Only the other party could think of such a thing. Wasn't this a waste of talent? Inside the house, Zint was struggling to negotiate with the worker because the other party's English was not very good. After he finished speaking, he saw two wolfhounds helping him catch rats in the warehouse. The stacked wood had long since rotted, and there were many rat nests under it. It wouldn't matter if no one lived there, but if people lived there, Zint didn't want rats to crawl across his face in the middle of the night. That was too terrifying. Ever since a former mafia boss moved in next door, the bureau chief and the instructor felt that it was very magical. What was this? Of course, they all knew that the other party was here for the dogs. It had nothing to do with them. However, the other party's identity was too special and too sensitive. They couldn't become enemies. They could only be friends. It didn't take long for the higher-ups to find out that Mr. Zint was living next door to Yu Xiao. This was a serious matter that needed to be treated with caution. After some discussion, the other party asked Yu Xiao, since he likes dogs, why don't you take Juan Duo for a walk? Yu Xiao's expression was particularly gloomy. He didn't need to take his dogs. They ran to Zint's place as soon as he got off work. Dan ran away, so naturally his partner ran away with him. The family, which was not lively to begin with, became even more desolate overnight. As a result, Yu Xiao had to live the life of an old man with an empty nest. Even though he still had the dogs he used to raise, he always felt that without Dan, he would lose 80% of his happiness. The lonely instructor had no choice but to ask his good friend, Chief Feng, to come visit more often. Chief Feng couldn't ask for more. Without saying anything, he moved his betting over. In the future, he would go to work with Yu Xiao and save the country's resources. Recently, there were a few unhurried missions that came in contact with their dogs. Whether they should go or not needed to be carefully studied. Yu Xiao invited Feng Xiao to his room. A strange case happened in a small coastal city in Ji province. The paranormal investigation unit asked us for help. They specifically asked for Dan. Feng Xiao asked, "They contacted you directly?" Yu Xiao explained, "They were testing me. They told me to report to you when I was interested." These people, Feng Xiao was still dissatisfied. The paranormal investigation unit has a lot of capable people. Why did they ask for Dan? Yu Xiao sighed. It's because we were in the limelight last time. Now, all the units are eyeing us covetously. Here, he poured a cup of tea for Feng Xiao. The fragrance of Bilyuakun lingered in the room. After drinking 2 mouthfuls of tea, Chi Feng's eyes didn't become clearer. Instead, they were covered with a layer of blurry mist. Yu Xiao talked about the problems that needed to be solved in front of him. Outside the glass window, there were lights from the neighbor's house in the distance. Occasionally, cars passed by the road, attracting the German shepherds outside the door. You said that a deputy director would be transferred over. Is it next week? Yu Xiao looked up and found that Feng Xiao wasn't listening to him at all. I'm talking to you. Why are you laughing? Hearing the reminder, Feng Xiao realized that he was laughing. Yes, a deputy director from the province will be transferred over. He's an old friend of ours, Su Mingbai. Yu Xiao said, "Then I'll go with you to the case in Ji province. Leave the bureau to old Su. You really know how to squeeze old Su." Yu Xiao didn't realize that he was also laughing. Okay, let's pack up and get ready. He hadn't gone on a mission with Feng Xiao for many years. Just thinking about it made him excited. Wait, did Feng Xiao specifically ask for old Su to come over? He asked. Feng Xiao shook his head. I didn't ask for it. I begged. Yu Xiao couldn't stop laughing for a long time. You want to go on a mission with me so much? I heard that there are many beauties in Ji province. I have to keep an eye on them. Feng Xiao had a bitter look on his face. You take them everywhere and leave me at home. He was too embarrassed to say that word. I wonder if old Su comes. Yu Xiao was also too embarrassed to say it. He only knew how to laugh. They were both in their 30s, but their eyes were still like that of a teenager. It made people's hearts race. Officer Little Bear, who ran to Zint's house after work, wasn't heartless. On the contrary, he was very concerned about Yu Xiao and Feng Xiao. He just wanted to leave some space for the two unmarried young men. Otherwise, he was afraid that his short life would end before he saw his trainer and the poop picker get out of a relationship. Fortunately, He received good news after running to Zent's house for half a month. The atmosphere between the poop picker and the trainer had a subtle change that could be seen with the naked eye. Xiao Qixi was worried that it was just her imagination. She asked Ao Daisai, "Do you feel that they are together?" Ao Daisai, "Are you talking about copulation?" Xiao Qixi face-bombed. No matter how many years had passed, Ao Daisai couldn't change his habit of being straightforward. It didn't have to be copulation. It was fine if they liked each other. Xiao Qixi thought that they liked each other, but feelings were hard to say. Furthermore, he had never been in a relationship with a human before. It was not impossible for his intuition to be wrong. Even Yelishanda, who had a human soul, wasn't sure. How could Ao Daisai, who was a purebred beast, be sure? He could only be sure that they had not copulated. Xiao Qixi, forget it. He didn't want to hear that word anymore. Let's not talk about it anymore. Ao Daisai felt that Little Bear was very depressed. He felt wronged. Was he not good at talking about this topic? Little Bear's mood was fickle. After playing for a long time, they finally received a mission. Yes, the days when they were clocking in at the police station were just for fun. They were getting paid for nothing. Ao Daisai was very happy. There was finally a mission. He couldn't wait to go out and do something. When he heard that they were going to the beach, he was even happier. Coincidentally, it was a full moon night. In the middle of the night, Ao Daisai pressed himself on Xiao Qixi's body. Occasionally, he would kiss his partner to please her. He hoped that the other party would be more comfortable. Xiao Qixi didn't feel uncomfortable rolling in the sheets with Ao Daisai. It was just that he was used to moaning to make Ao Daisai feel sorry for him. He wanted the other party to stop doing it for a while. But this was not something that Ao Daisai could control. If he could control it, he would have stopped the first step. It had nothing to do with shame. Ao Daisai didn't know what shame was. He just felt sorry for Xiao Qixi. He knew that Xiao Qixi would resist. But he had no choice. He still had to endure this phenomenon every time they did it. If Little Bear didn't cooperate and move around, the time for him to regain his calmness would be prolonged. Then Little Bear would blame him and say that it was all his fault. Ao Daisai. Okay, it's all my fault. In the middle of the night, Xiao Qixi finally regained his freedom in a daze and could sleep. Ao Daisai kissed his face and gently promised, "When we go to the beach, I'll catch you seals to eat." Xiao Qixi only remembered this promise when he woke up in the morning. At that time, he laughed until his sleepiness disappeared. Ga fool Ao Daisai. Did he think that there were seals at the beach? There are no seals at the beach of G province. There are no whales either. The naughty Little Bear didn't tell Ao Daisai. He even cooperated and nestled in his arms. "Okay, I want to eat seals. I'll wait for you." Looking down at the coquettish Little Bear, Ao Daisai secretly decided that he would catch more seals when the time came. Before the mission, Xiao Qixi ran to Sen's house to say goodbye to him. Feng Xiao also came. Otherwise, these two cross-species friends wouldn't be able to communicate. Mission. Worry appeared on Sen's face. After all, he was once one of Yelishanda's missions. One could imagine how dangerous it would be. Can I know what the mission is about? Will it be dangerous? Woof woof. It shouldn't be. It's just a normal case. Xiao Qixi held his head high and his chest out. His face said, "You have to believe in my fighting ability." Sun was immediately attracted by him. "Oh, okay. I know you're very good." He picked up a piece of fried egg from the table and asked Feng Xiao before feeding it, "Can I?" Feng Xiao wanted to say no because it was against the rules, but on second thought, Sun must have fed him a lot when he was abroad. He simply nodded his head because he couldn't control Dandan. "I can't tell you the details. I can only say that it's not very dangerous." Feng Xiao used Sin's example as an example. "At least it's not as dangerous as undercover missions. So you also know that undercover missions are dangerous." After feeding him, Sun wiped his hands with a napkin. He had said before that he was disgusted with dog training. "You're squeezing his value." Feng Xiao said, "Why don't you say that he's realizing his value? Just like me and my comrades, unless you subconsciously don't treat him as an equal." Sun choked. "Woof woof. Okay, stop arguing. What's there to argue about? Sun was a capitalist, and the poop picker was an elite in the system. They just had different standpoints. Xiao Qixi intervened between the two. One licked the other rubbed the other, and acted as a peacemaker. The mediation was very successful. The expressions of the two humans only lasted for a few seconds before they calmed down. You have to be careful. Sun used the hand that had been licked to hold Yulishanda's handsome face and kissed his forehead. I do think that you don't have to work so hard, but that doesn't stop me from being proud of you, Yulishanda. Feng Xiao straightened his back and revealed a mysterious smile. Right? No one would feel that serving the people was something that they couldn't be proud of. Outside the door, Ao Daisai narrowed his eyes and waited casually. It was snowing a little today. Snowflakes fell on his eyelashes, adding a bit of gentleness to his wild face. Xiao Qixi didn't want him to wait for too long. After exchanging pleasantries, she came out and stood in front of him, licking the snowflakes that had fallen on his face. Feng Xiao and Sun witnessed their love. The former looked emotional and slightly envious, while the latter had never experienced what love felt like. He just felt that the scene of them snuggling together was particularly comfortable. At the same time, it also made him a little curious. What did love feel like? The weather in Ji province was warm. As soon as Officer Little Bear got off the plane, he felt a wave of heat hit him in the face. His long fur, to keep out the cold, suddenly seemed like an extra burden. It was so hot. He fainted from the heat. Wasn't it winter? The coastal area of Ji province was indeed as hot as the legend said. Ao Daisai was also hot, but he quickly got used to it. His ability to adapt was stronger than that of humans. The members of the Paranormal Investigation Unit who came to pick them up drove a 7-seater car. It was just right for the 3 of them and 2 dogs. There was also a seat for luggage. Are you tired? Let Dan and the others stay in the front. You can sleep in the back. Yu Xiao told Feng Xiao that in order to go on a mission with him, this person had been handing over work day and night for the past 2 days. He had only slept at 3 in the morning last night. Feng Xiao said, "It's okay. I slept for a while on the plane. Don't force yourself. Go quickly." Yu Xiao arranged it half forcefully and pushed Feng Xiao to the back. Yulishanda, who also wanted to lie down, could only give the back seat to the poop picker. Forget it. The poop picker's dark circles were already showing. How pitiful. The friend from the Paranormal Investigation Unit glanced sideways. He thought that this subordinate got along quite well. He had wanted to talk about the case in the car, but seeing this, he dismissed the idea. Since he couldn't talk to people, he would observe the legendary divine dogs. There were 2 of them. Through the rearview mirror, the comrades from the Paranormal Investigation Unit saw them licking each other. They didn't stay idle the whole way. Later, one of the dogs stared at the mirror for a full 3 seconds. It was creepy. The driver felt that the 2 people and the 2 dogs gave off a strange feeling. Because the small coastal town was relatively remote, it was already dusk when they arrived. The sunset by the sea was very beautiful. The 2 police officers who came to support had police dogs with them. It was inconvenient for them to stay in the hotel, so they stayed in the local police station. Because it was too late for action, the few people gathered together for a meeting and prepared to rest. Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai listened to the sound of the waves close by. How could they rest in peace? They couldn't wait to run on the beach. Although their trainer had warned them not to go out to play, the trainer's original words were, "There are many criminals out there who steal dogs. You're so good-looking. Be careful that the dog thieves don't put a sack on you." Little Bear wasn't afraid. Did Ao Daisai agree? Trap me. Of course, Ao Daisai didn't agree. He wasn't afraid of the dog thieves. He was afraid of nothing except guns. In the middle of the night, he took Yulishanda to the beach to have fun. They enjoyed the sea breeze and looked at the sea. Then, they followed the continuous coastline to look for traces of seals. After sniffing around the reef, Otis finally felt that something was wrong. He turned around and looked at Alexander, who was following behind him. "Do you smell a seal?" he asked. "Do you smell a seal?" He suspected that there was something wrong with his sense of smell. Otherwise, why couldn't he smell any seals? Xiao Qixi originally wanted to joke with Ao Daisai and mess with him. However, when it really came to this, he couldn't bear to do it. He told a white lie. Seals wouldn't appear in this area during this season. Ao Daisai, they all went far away to spend the winter. Really? Then the seals here are really strange. Ao Daisai muttered, it's not cold here. Yes, they're all hiding in a place far away. Xiao Qishi walked to Ao Daisai's side and looked up at the stars in the sky. He said in surprise, look, the stars here are so similar to the stars we saw at sea in the past. Ao Daisai also looked up. His thoughts drifted away with Little Bear's voice. He also remembered the wonderful days at the beach. He was very happy to be back at the beach. His only regret was that he didn't catch any seals for Little Bear to eat. Xiao Qishi didn't regret it. He felt that it was already very good to be able to come this far with Ao Daisai. Tom didn't belong to them forever. Perhaps the next time will be the last time they would meet. Of course, he would never discuss these negative things with Ao Daisai. Ao Daisai didn't have any worries. He envied that Ao Daisai didn't think too much like a human. No, Ao Daisai also had worries, but his worries were very simple and practical. For example, if he didn't have any seals, what could he use to coax little cutie to go on a date with him? He searched the entire beach and found a beautiful giant conch. He gave this giant conch to Little Bear. Xiao Qishi lay on the beach and put his ear to the conch's mouth. After listening for a while, he happily told Ao Daisai, I heard a whale's song. It's so beautiful. Yes, Ao Daisai knew that Little Bear didn't hear the whale's song. He just missed the past. The author has something to say. Little Bear will always be Ao Daisai's little treasure. Chapter 157. This week, when Rang called Mr. Zant, he vaguely felt that the other party was absent-minded, as if he was hiding something and was worried about something. Rang was quite worried. Since his work had come to an end, he proposed to come to China to visit Mr. Zant. He thought that he would be rejected, but Mr. Zant responded absent-mindedly and didn't think about it at all. Rang sighed. Why is my life so hard? This was the first time in more than 20 years that he liked someone. The other party was his leader, and a leader whose heart belonged to someone else. The situation was quite bad. Even though he had made up his mind to snatch Mr. Zant from that person, he was just talking. He wasn't confident at all. If Mr. Zant really liked the other party so much, Rang thought, how can I bear to see him not get what he wants? Of course, he would catch that heartless man, clean him up, and send him to Mr. Zant's bed. Yilashanda had been out on a mission these days, and Zant was indeed absent-minded. He didn't remember what he had said until he hung up. He immediately asked someone to prepare a room. Zant was used to being taken care of. Even in China, there were people taking care of his daily life. Fortunately, the house here was spacious enough. Rang soon arrived at Zant's new place. No matter how spacious it was, it couldn't compare to the original manor, not to mention that there was a family next door. The farm was even bigger than Mr. Zant's yard. It was extremely illogical, unless that heartless man lived there. Rang was too smart. He asked the person who brought him to the guest room. Sure enough, there were 2 police officers next door. Was this what Mr. Zant meant by different camps? If they liked each other, what was wrong with that? It could only be said that the other party didn't like their Mr. Zant that much. What a guy who doesn't know how lucky he is, Rang muttered, still wearing an impeccable smile. After he arrived, he took over Zant's daily life, including cooking and daily refreshments. Although he was never tired of it, Zant couldn't stand it. He felt that something was wrong. Rang, you're here on vacation. Actually, you don't have to do these things yourself. You can just leave it to someone else. Zant understood that Rang was interested in housekeeping, but he was too dedicated. He only needed Rang to help him manage his business. He didn't need Rang to be a part-time housekeeper. But I like it, Rang said, not listening to him and continuing to cook for Zant. Zant was helpless. Don't you like my cooking? Jean stood beside Zant meticulously and elegantly. He picked up the teapot and filled Zant's cup with tea. It was snowing outside, and a fire was burning in the fireplace. Vincent was reading a detective book. Ren Baqian glanced over and found the theme of the book. For that person, who wouldn't like a cup of warm black tea on a snowy day? Sun shrugged. Whatever. He just felt that it was a little strange. It made him a little distracted, even when he was reading. After all, he was different from a bodyguard. Doing such a thing was really too degrading. He didn't want to read anymore and wanted to go back to the bedroom to rest. However, when he got up, he was too reckless and accidentally kicked the solid wood sofa leg. His face twisted in pain. "Does it hurt? Please take a seat." A concerned voice sounded from his side. After Vincent sat down, he felt a pair of hands touching his ankles. He saw Jean half kneeling in front of him and taking off his socks to check. "The situation is good. There are no bruises and no bleeding." When Vincent heard the other party heave a sigh of relief, the strange feeling in his heart came back to haunt him. It spread from the soles of his feet to the tips of his fingers. After 2 days, the owner of the farm next door finally came back. Rinpochian was very happy and wanted to visit him as soon as he heard the news. Forgive him for being blunt, but this was not reserved at all. It was too cheap. "Sir, you should at least wear a coat." Smiling, Jean put a down jacket on his arm and was about to take it out for Sir to wear. However, the other party couldn't wait to go out and stepped into the snow in a sweater. "Sir is really breaking my heart all the time." Jean muttered to himself and quickly caught up with the figure in front of him. When the two parties closed the distance, they had already arrived at the house of the heartless man. The other party seemed to have heard the noise and came out to greet them. The two poop pickers and the two wolfhounds had just come back. They hadn't taken off their coats and uniforms, mainly because Xiao Qixi had smelled Vincent and opened the door to come out. "Your old flame is here?" The poop picker joked and came out to take a look. "It really is him. Hey, why is there another one behind him?" "No way. Why did he have to bring a bodyguard when visiting someone in the countryside?" "Yilashanda," Mr. Vincent shouted. Rinpochian's eyebrows twitched. So that person was called Yilashanda? It was really a tacky name. He couldn't believe that this was Sir's taste. However, he was quite good-looking, although he didn't know which one it was. Rinpochian guessed that it was the one with a fiercer aura. Yilashanda, whose name was called, happily hugged his human friend. His tail kept wagging behind him, and his happiness was obvious. Ao Daisai waited quietly on the steps. He started to think that it was a good thing to have someone to play with Yilashanda. Seeing Vincent hugging a wolfhound, Jean was the most shocked. Could it be that Yilashanda wasn't a man, but a dog? That would be a huge misunderstanding. Stunned, Rinpochian stood there for 5 seconds and quickly accepted the fact that Sir didn't like anyone. As usual, Sir only liked dogs. For a moment, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Of course, he was glad that Sir didn't like anyone, but the problem was that he only liked dogs. This wasn't a good sign either. "It's too cold. Put it on." Rinpochian walked over and gently put the jacket on Vincent's shoulders. "Thank you." Vincent felt his body warm up. He had to admit that it was quite cold in the snow. The down jacket that Rinpochian brought was just right. The two police officers standing at the door couldn't help but click their tongues. Such an outstanding person was actually just Vincent's bodyguard. After all, Vincent didn't introduce him specifically, so they misunderstood. "Officers, did your mission go smoothly?" Vincent turned his attention back to his neighbor. At the same time, he checked Yilashanda with both hands. He was happy to know that the other party wasn't injured. "It went very smoothly. Thank you for your concern." Feng Xiao said. Yilashanda wasn't injured either. He just had a stomachache because he secretly ate our barbecued fish at the beach. Ouch. Was there a need to mention such a thing? Xiao Qixi was speechless. He didn't have a stomachache because he ate the barbecued fish. He was clearly not acclimatized. Ao Daisai was fine. Of course, because Ao Daisai was thick-skinned, he couldn't compare to a delicate puppy boy like him. "That's good." After confirming that Yilashanda was fine, Vincent tactfully said goodbye and returned to his home. He left the time for these travel-worn public servants. "Is it because of Alexander that you've been worried for the past few days?" Rinpochian accompanied Vincent on the way home. He chased after Vincent to give him clothes, but he didn't wear much himself. "Yes," Vincent said. "He's very cute." Rinpochian smiled. Previously, because he was worried that Sir had someone he liked, he didn't dare to express his feelings. Now that he finally knew that it was just a misunderstanding, he started to have further thoughts. "Sir, why don't you invite the neighbors over for dinner tomorrow? I'll cook personally," Rinpoche suggested softly. Vincent was also thinking about this matter. Rinpoche's suggestion was exactly what he wanted. But would it be too tiring? It was fine if Rinpoche had to take care of his meals, but it was too much work for 4 people. "Are you sure? You don't need other chefs to help you?" Rinpoche nodded. "Sir, don't worry. I'll do a good job." Vincent thought to himself, "Who cares if you'll do a good job? I just feel that it's too tiring." But since Rinpoche insisted, he didn't nag anymore. This wasn't his personality. Feng Xiao and Yu Xiao had just returned. Many people invited them to dinner, but they didn't want to go out to socialize. They might as well go home and cook hot pot. Since Vincent had sent them an invitation, they happily chose to go home to eat. They just didn't know what their neighbors would invite them to eat. Stargazing? It was said that all foreign dishes tasted the same. On the way home, the two of them muttered in disgust that if it didn't taste good, they would go home for supper. But they couldn't disrespect their neighbors. No matter how bad it tasted, they had to hold it in. Xiao Qi clicked her tongue in her heart. The poop picker and the trainer are so bad. They're talking about the bad cuisine of their foreign friends behind their backs. Ao Daisai, who had gotten the new phrase, asked, "What is stargazing?" Xiao Qi, "It's a type of food that tastes really bad." Ao Daisai, who was about to praise the name, was speechless. If even Little Bear found the food to be bad, how bad would it taste? It was hard to imagine. This wasn't the first time Xiao Qi and Ao Daisai had been to Vincent's house. They were familiar with the place and found a place to play. Vincent's house had bought many things specially for them. There was even a dog kennel. When they first arrived, they found it strange. Why did they only see the dog kennel and dog toys, but not the dog? So the dog was at their neighbor's house. Tonight's dinner was very delicious. The exquisiteness of every dish refreshed the two poop pickers' impression of foreign dishes. It seemed that they didn't have to cook supper for themselves at night. Next, there was tea and refreshments. It was hard to believe that such exquisite dishes and refreshments were made by a handsome British man. It turned out that he wasn't a bodyguard, but a butler. While serving tea and chatting, Rinpoche occasionally glanced at the wolfhounds rolling around on the floor and felt that there was something strange between them. Rather than saying that the two male dogs were fighting, it was better to say that they were flirting and showing mercy to each other. Rinpoche actually tasted some sweetness. Ao Daisai didn't want to roll around in public, but Little Bear was full and bored, so it teased him in all sorts of ways. It either bit its claws or its tail. Rinpoche slowly became childish. He opened his mouth and bit the dog. Of course, he controlled his strength. Otherwise, the dog would pretend to cry again. In the dead of night, after sending the guests away, Rinpoche stood in the kitchen and washed the cutlery and tea set. Even when doing these trivial chores, he still stood upright with a serious and indifferent expression, as if he was doing something that he enjoyed. What a strange person, Rinpoche thought. He was ready to go to bed, but after thinking about it, he decided to come over and solemnly thank Rinpoche for his performance tonight. "Sir." Rinpoche turned around and smiled. "You haven't slept yet?" Vincent, who was wearing pajamas, had drunk some wine for dinner. His cheeks were slightly red. In Rinpoche's eyes, the other party looked like a ripe peach that tempted people to commit crimes. He didn't dare to look. "I'm going to sleep soon." "Thank you for what you did today," Ron Vincent said. "It's my pleasure." Rinpoche's voice was low. It was especially sexy at night. Vincent swallowed. Maybe it was the heater here that made his throat feel dry. "Can I have a glass of milk?" "Oh, okay. Please wait a moment." Rinpoche immediately put down his work and took out a new glass to make milk for Vincent. "Wait in the room first. I'll bring it to you later." It only took a few minutes to make milk, but because Vincent had drunk wine and had just come out of the shower, he unknowingly fell asleep leaning against the bed. "Sir." Rinpoche's voice didn't wake him up. Rinpoche's eyes were unbelievably soft when he found that Vincent had fallen asleep. He carefully placed the glass of milk on the bedside table. His gaze was fixed on Vincent, and a voice sighed in his heart. "Do you know that I've been chasing after you since I was a teenager?" This perverted concern had already gotten out of hand. Yes, after many years of fermenting, it had become a terrifying beast. and Vincent had actually let him come to his side. This was no less than pressing the detonator installed on Rinpoche's body to detonate him. Rinpoche's fingertips hovered in the air and traced Vincent's facial features. Although I'm standing in front of you with a smile, do you know that my internal organs are experiencing a terrifying nuclear explosion? The two handsome faces were getting closer and closer. Run, who had a pair of captivating lips, kissed Sir's thin lips and tasted them. Vincent felt his lips itch in his dream. He subconsciously stuck out the tip of his tongue to lick them. Rinpoche was about to steal a kiss and run away, but his waist and back stiffened, and he froze on the spot. Sir is really torturing, he thought. Then he couldn't bear to leave. He closed his eyes, and pride opened the other party's lips to attack. He was very skilled. Vincent didn't feel uncomfortable when he woke up. He was just shocked. What's going on? Of course, Vincent ended the kiss quickly. Run? The dream was over. Rinpoche touched his lips reluctantly. His waist was bent as usual, and his eyes were lowered. Sir, I'm sorry. Vincent was still leaning against the headboard in a daze. He didn't know what had happened. Your milk. Rinpoche didn't say much. He smiled as usual and brought the milk over. Vincent took the glass of milk and drank a few sips to calm himself down. Were you kissing me just now? No, you also responded. Rinpoche's posture was very low, but he was very persistent. If it had been in the past, Vincent would have poured all the milk over his head and taught him how to speak. Or he would have immediately told him to get lost, pack up, and go back to his hometown to eat himself. But now, Vincent looked at the subordinate he had put in an important position. You like me? It was an affirmative sentence. This was because Zen had already figured out why he felt so strange about this person. If the other party liked him, everything would make sense. What interest in the housekeeping profession? It was all bullshit. Rinpoche sighed. Yes. He lowered his posture even more, almost kneeling in front of the bed. Perhaps he would rather show weakness with his actions than beg for mercy with his words. Please don't tell him to pack up and leave. Forgive him for not being able to say it. Oh, Vincent said coldly, as if he were listening to something that wasn't worth mentioning. It was very cold. The room was silent for a moment. Only the sound of Vincent drinking milk could be heard. Go out. I'm going to sleep, Vincent said as he put the empty glass in Ren's hand. Good night, sir. Sweet dreams. Rinpoche held the still warm glass with a smile. When he went out and closed the door, he muttered, Are you allowing me to be presumptuous? Sorry. He couldn't help it. It gave him a headache. He couldn't sleep tonight. It wasn't because he was sad, but because he was too excited. But the next morning, he still prepared a rather sumptuous breakfast. What was worth being happy about was that Mr. Chung seemed to have slept well last night. His eyebrows were relaxed, and he didn't pursue the ambiguous kiss. After hesitating for a long time, when Rinpoche removed the napkin for Vincent, he boldly offered himself. Can I serve you in your room tonight? Of course, his voice was very low. There was no need to announce such things loudly. Vincent thought for a moment and nodded. Then allow him to be close to him. There were too few people in the world that he could trust, and he was too lonely by himself. Since he dared to entrust his career to Rinpoche, it didn't seem impossible to entrust his body to Rinpoche as well. Thank you, sir. Rinpoche heaved a sigh of relief. He finally didn't have that indiscernible smile on his face. This time, it was real. The author has something to say. This pair ends here. Tomorrow, this unit will finish the chapter. Chapter 158. There was once when Xiao Qixi came over to visit her neighbor's house. She heard a strange sound coming from below the wall, and when she realized what it was, she felt uneasy. The scene was very awkward, especially when A.O. Daisai was next to him. Its ears kept shaking, and it was most likely curious about the sound. A.O. Daisai, let's go. It's not convenient for Vincent to entertain you today. Xiao Qixi murmured as he prayed that A.O. Daisai would not discover the secret of the great harmony of human life. Unfortunately, he underestimated A.O. Daisai's intelligence. It sniffed the air and stated calmly, They are mating. Xiao Qixi was speechless. But then again, he was curious about who it was. He really wanted to know, did you recognize who it was? This was a serious matter. Xiao Qixi could not jump to conclusions. It would be embarrassing if he guessed wrong. The two humans eating with us. Ao Daisai answered with certainty. Sure enough, Xiao Qixi doubts were solved, but there was another one. Who was up and who was down? Ahem. But it was not good to continue prying. It felt like a pervert. They walked away silently. When they came back the next morning, they saw Rang busy in the kitchen. When he saw them, he happily brought them food. So Officer Little Bear said, "Vincent, you were so disappointing." But it was good that both of them had someone they liked. Otherwise, he would have been thinking about what he owed Vincent, causing him to leave his hometown and come to this place. Now, Vincent had a lover to rely on. Since Rang had a career to take care of abroad, he would have to go back to work after staying here for a while. In order to take care of his lover, he would come over whenever he had time. This was good. While watching their neighbor's life gradually stabilizing, the four public servants living next door continued their mission. Although the poop picker had tried his best to screen them from missions, as two police dogs working in a fourth-tier city, they still had much more missions than the police dogs in a first-tier city. Of course, they participated in all the missions that seemed difficult. Rescues in snowy mountains and caves. He had cooperated with the military many times and carried out long-term missions. He had even guarded the borders. In countless conflicts, he had brushed shoulders with death and saved the lives of many of his comrades. He had also personally witnessed his comrades sacrificing themselves beside him. Every time a comrade was sacrificed, the sentimental little bear would cry his eyes out because he would always remember that the other party had touched his head not long ago. Xiao Qixi was lucky that Ao Daisai had never been injured. As for himself, it was normal for him to sprain his ankles sometimes, or when they encountered a rayflower field, they couldn't help but play around and get stung in the face by bees. Ao Daisai, it's all my fault. However, he would still feel distressed and seek medicine from humans to reduce swelling and pain. Every day, he would apply medicine to the crying little bear. Generally, police dogs would retire after serving for 8 to 10 years. At that time, they would have a lot of diseases, and there seemed to be no other choice but to retire and enjoy their old age. Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai were in good health in their 10th year of service. They could serve for another 3 or 4 years. The military and the police also felt that their retirement was a great loss to the country and didn't want them to retire. However, the trainers and the poop picker felt that the two dogs had worked too hard in their lives. They had made enough contributions. 12 first-class awards and 18 second-class awards. The medals filled several brocade boxes, and the badges were densely pinned to their chests. In their 10th year as police dogs, Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai retired with honor. The police station held a retirement ceremony for them. Countless colleagues attended the ceremony, including the police, the military, the Major Crimes Unit, the Paranormal Activity Unit, and the National Security Agency. Vincent and the others also wanted to attend, but they were refused entry and could only watch from afar. It was Vincent's biggest regret that he couldn't hug Yolanda and his partner at the ceremony. He could only take a photo with them after the ceremony. What made him happy was that the photo was very beautiful. Everyone who stood next to them was very proud. Look, I'm his relative. The newspapers were very lively that day. When outsiders heard about such a lineup, they were all guessing which general had retired. It wasn't a general, but a senior colonel and a major general. Ao Daisai's rank was 1 rank higher because he had completed an important mission alone. It was a very dangerous mission, and everyone was mentally prepared to lose Comrade Ping, and wasn't that bullshit? Even though Ao Daisai had been missing for half a month, Xiao Qixi believed that he would come back. What would he do if he didn't come back? After half a month, Ao Daisai came back, and his rank was 1 rank higher than his partner's. Xiao Qixi wanted to do something big too. However, the country was becoming more and more prosperous, and the world was peaceful. There weren't many first-class awards to be made. This was a good thing. Over time, Xiao Qixi didn't obsess over it until they retired. People who wanted to adopt them had lined up from the northernmost part of the country to the southernmost part of the country. Yu Xiao and Feng Xiao certainly want to keep Dan Dan and Ping by their side. Because they were still young and their family members weren't in the city, according to the regulations, they weren't suitable to be adopted. People from all walks of life called them every day, promising that they would take good care of the two dogs. Things like taking them to the south in winter and the north in summer became the most basic treatment. The poop picker thought about it. In terms of conditions and treatment, there was one right next door. After they were adopted, they could often see each other. Therefore, Zen was able to adopt Yulashanda and Ping'an. It was the result of some under-the-table manipulation. When they signed the adoption contract, there was a clause on it that was different from all the other retired police and military dogs. It was very important. Their freedom couldn't be restricted. The rest were regulations, such as allowing visits and contact at any time, etc. Zen didn't have any objections and signed the contract without hesitation. North in summer and south in winter, right? When they retired, it was winter. After signing the contract, the new owner took the two dogs to the Maldives and didn't know when they would return. The two poop pickers who could only see the dogs through video calls said, "I also want to retire. I also want to go to the Maldives for a vacation." Their retirement life was enviable. In the video, the two dogs were basking in the sun on a cruise ship and surfing. They looked very happy. Of course, there were seals here. Chao Chi-Shi and Ao Daisai smelled seals. Even if they couldn't eat them, they were very happy. Poop Picker said, "Why are they so good at balancing? I don't even understand it myself." Zent said, "Because they are four-wheel drive dogs and we are two-wheel drive dogs." When it was no longer suitable to stay in the Maldives, Zint took them to another city. Spring in southern Europe was very beautiful. The sky was blue and flowers bloomed all year round. Behind a fairy tale-like house was a mountain. A winding road spiraled upward. The towering mountain was shrouded in clouds, waiting for adventurers to explore. The adoption contract that didn't restrict their freedom finally worked. One day, Zint woke up and found that the two dogs weren't at home, but he wasn't worried at all. Well, there was no point in worrying. He could only wait patiently for them to come back. Chao Chi-Shi and Ao Daisai went on a self-guided trip. They ran in the mountains to their heart's content, stopping and walking like retired old men and women going on a road trip. They were happy, but unfortunately, no one took photos of them. Half a month later, Chao Chi-Shi and Ao Daisai came home dirty and asked Zen to give them a bath. "Are you guys rolling in a quagmire? Why are you so dirty?" Vincent almost fainted when he saw them, because Alisanda's eyes were clean and the rest of his body was dirty. "Oh my God, you're not allowed to enter the house. Just stop at the door." Chao Chi-Shi didn't roll in the mud. He just slipped and fell. Ao Daisai wasn't dirty. The only dirty parts of his body were rubbed off by Little Bear. Mr. Zint, who didn't do any household chores, rolled up his sleeves and bathed them with a hose on the lawn in the yard. The mist sprayed out by the watering machine on the lawn reflected a beautiful rainbow. Yulashanda shook his head, splashing water everywhere. Zint couldn't help but think that many years ago, this guy was very gentlemanly. But now, the older he got, the more he looked like a naughty child. Ao Daisai picked up the hose with his mouth and helped Zint wash the dirty little bear. He was very busy. There was really a lot of good news today. In the afternoon, Rang also arrived. The other party rushed back, covered in dust, and cooked delicious food for them. "Sir, I finally see you again. I miss you very much." He immediately hugged Zint, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. If Zint allowed him, he even wanted to spin around. Chao Chi-Shi pointed and said, "Look at him, then look at the poop picker. He was nothing. Let me see what he brought." Ao Daisai was bored, so he went forward and searched Zint's luggage. Then, he wasn't surprised to find prohibited items. Ao Daisai's impression of Zint was that he was an outlaw and needed special attention. "Don't be like this. You're already retired." Zint didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw Ao Daisai pressing his paws on his luggage. "What did you bring?" Zint asked. "Guns and stuff." This was Zint's habit. He would feel uncomfortable if he didn't bring him. Chao Chi-Shi was puzzled. Can this pass the security check? Ao Daisai. The security check in foreign countries is not strict. Okay, stay here obediently. I'll make dinner for you. Zent pulled his luggage and sent it into the bedroom anxiously. You don't have to be so nervous. They're used to it. Zent laughed. Now, he completely trusted Zent. He didn't suspect that the other party's gun would be a threat to him. Perhaps the gun was ultimately to protect him. In the living room, the family of three waited obediently to be fed. Soon, the aroma of food slowly wafted through the southern European spring evening. No matter how much he ran outside, every new year, Zent would definitely bring the two dogs back to the farm and hand them over to two police officers. The new year was very important to them. It was worth remembering that one year, there was an unexpected situation during the new year. Feng Xiao and Yu Xiao went out on a police mission during the new year and accidentally brought the two dogs with them. This wasn't the main point. The main point was that they even helped them. Because of this, they were teased by their colleagues for not having a certificate for a long time. Feng Xiao and Yu Xiao also laughed. As they laughed, they became sad. That time, they clearly felt that Ping, Un, and Dan Dan's movements were much slower. But this was normal. People were old, let alone dogs with short lifespans. They accepted the fact that they would grow old, and they also accepted the fact that the two dogs would grow old. However, no matter how mentally prepared they were, they still couldn't bear to part with them. Dan Dan and Ping were their most special comrades and family. Xiao Qixi also couldn't bear to leave this group of cute people. Unfortunately, she only had one life with them. Would Ao Daisai be reluctant to part with this world? Xiao Qixi didn't think that she would share her feelings with her partner. In his heart, Ao Daisai was not sentimental. She was always so rational and calm. She had never discussed the future with him. In the past, she was afraid of loneliness, but that was only because she wasn't by his side. She would. However, Ao Daisai said that it was because he couldn't bear to part with Yolashanda. No one could be sure if they would be able to see each other the next time they opened their eyes. In the long years, love might no longer boil, but the temperature did not change. It had never cooled down. Hearing this answer, Xiao Qixi felt a warm current flowing through her heart. Me too, he thought. Not long after, Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai quietly left home. This time, it wasn't a trip, but a farewell to humanity. No one could find them. Therefore, they didn't have a funeral or a death announcement. They had always lived in the hearts of everyone like legends. Was this a lie? Perhaps it wasn't a lie, but a belief. The author has something to say. Update another chapter at 7 o'clock. Double update today. Chapter 159. The Peacock King, the king of all birds light years away. There was a shining planet at the edge of the Milky Way. It was called Earth. It was already very old, and its civilization was much more advanced than it was a few decades ago. In the past few decades, Earth had been experiencing a disaster of overexploitation and severe environmental pollution. Currently, China was in the process of environmental purification and saving species. After 30 years and a generation's worth of effort, people finally used advanced technology to basically solve the environmental problem, but the extinction of many species would forever be a pain in the hearts of humans. White rhinoceroses, eyelashes, Platz's wild horses, mountain gorillas, humpback whales, bald eagles, these treasures that people used to hear about were forever goodbye to this planet. China's green peacocks were once on the verge of extinction. In 2020, there were only 600 green peacocks left in the world. Most of these 600 lived in China's Yunnan province and were taken care of by conservation areas. Unfortunately, there are almost no wild green peacocks. By the year 2065, the number of green peacocks was even lower. There were only 20 of them left. Even though their living environment had been improved and there were people who helped them breed, the number of green peacocks was still decreasing. The professors who specialized in breeding green peacocks were mentally and physically exhausted and heartbroken when they saw nest after nest of failed peacock eggs. Sometimes, when they finally hatched, the survival rate wasn't high. This was the most torturous. Everyone was so happy when the little peacocks hatched, and so heartbroken when the little peacocks died prematurely. Who would have thought that the little peacocks, who were still lying in the nest the night before, would wake up the next morning and find that something was wrong? They couldn't be fed and weren't lively. Their soft necks had no strength at all, and they were anxious. The intern assistant on the night shift watched the nest and took off his glasses to wipe his tears in self-blame. He felt that it was his fault that the little peacocks didn't survive. The professor patted him on the shoulder to calm him down. The assistant choked out, "How can I not be anxious? Professor, there are only 20 left. If we can't come up with a way to increase the survival rate, we'll lose the green peacocks forever." That was indeed the case. Moreover, not all 20 peacocks were of reproductive age. Many of them already stopped laying eggs. The failure of the little peacocks affected the female peacock's mood. Sometimes, even though it was the breeding age, the female peacock didn't like to lay eggs. During the breeding season in March this year, the reserve welcomed a total of 3 nests of green peacock eggs. Each nest had 5 to 6 eggs. One nest had 2, one had 1, and one had just been laid. At present, the 3 little peacocks that were still alive were the most important objects to be protected in the sanctuary. Unfortunately, the little peacock that was not in good condition left after 2 days of observation. The intern assistant who had taken care of little peacock for a week burst into tears. She simply could not accept it. He was crying so hard, not for the little peacock that had just left, but for the future of the green peacock. Everyone knew that the green peacock would not have a future. In order to breed green peacocks, the reserve had spent a frightening amount of money. After seeing no results, the reserve naturally would not invest a large amount of money. However, the professors did not give up. If there was no funding, they would still earn it. Of course, as researchers, they were not good at business. They heard that live streaming was very profitable, so they set up a live streaming program in the reserve to show everyone the colorful scenery of the reserve. However, serious science and introduction could not attract people. The professors worked hard for a long time, but the number of people in the broadcast room was still very few. Everyone was very depressed. They could not do research, and they could not make money. It was really a blow to their confidence. Fortunately, someone said that people nowadays did not like to look at animals. They all like to look at handsome men and beautiful women. The same scenery and the same animals. The effect of a serious old man and a handsome young man's introduction were completely different. Therefore, the reserve came up with a bad idea. They recruited a young and handsome professor to be responsible for open source. Professor Han Tingjun was also a peacock lover. When he heard that the Yunnan Reserve was recruiting new people, he gave up his job and said goodbye to his original unit to take up a post in the remote border. The serious situation of the green peacock was well known, but they did not expect that breeding funding would also be a problem. It was not that the country did not want to allocate money. How to put it? There were millions of endangered species, and the green peacock was just one of them. It was impossible to allocate all the funds to the green peacock. Professor Han joined the group with funding. He came from a good family and had a wide range of connections. Once he appeared on camera to do business for the peacock business, this whirlwind was destined to not stop. At first, people gave money for the handsome Professor Han. Later, they gave money for the green peacock itself. This process, people were willing to call it nirvana. Ao Daisai felt that he had fallen asleep. In the first half of the night, he slept soundly because his arms were always full. The little bear was like a small flame, warming his chest. For a second, Ao Daisai, who usually did not think about anything, had a thought in his mind. If we hug each other like this, even if we sleep forever and never open our eyes, so what? But unfortunately, in the second half of the night, Ao Daisai no longer felt the same sense of security as when he hugged the little bear. The treasure in his arms disappeared without a trace, as if someone had taken it away from him. The fear and loneliness of losing his partner angered Ao Daisai in his deep sleep. He woke up from his muddled sleep and went to look for the little cutie that he had lost. Perhaps, many lives left a trace of consciousness in the world after the end. If one had a strong enough will and willpower, they could be reborn. If they had not lost each other in a daze, perhaps they would never have woken up again. Ao Daisai opened his eyes and found himself dozing off on a dead tree in the wilderness. He was surrounded by the familiar primeval forest, and the moist smell of late spring assailed his nostrils. And he was dragging a long and gorgeous tail. It was as white as the clouds in the sky and the snow on the peak of the mountain. In the past, when he lived in the forest, he would occasionally meet peacocks. Ao Daisai spread his wings and flew to the lake. He tilted his head and looked at the water surface. He quickly accepted the fact that he was a white peacock in this life. He blinked his eyes and thought of the past. His beloved little bear loved to see peacocks. Every time he met a peacock, he would chase after it. He even wanted to pluck a peacock feather from the peacock's tail. Ao Daisai turned his head and looked at his tail. He suddenly shivered. Of course, if Yolashanda really wanted to play, he would not mind plucking a feather from his tail. Little bear, Ao Daisai looked around and did not find Yolashanda. He dragged his tail and looked around. He opened his mouth and wanted to call out to Little Bear. But peacocks' throats were different from beasts. They could only make sounds that had a small range. Ao Daisai was used to being at the top of the food chain. He did not consider that his voice would attract predators in the forest. Leopards, tigers, and other large carnivores were the natural enemies of peacocks. When Ao Daisai smelled the familiar scent of a leopard, he knew that he was in danger. But it did not matter. He had a pair of wings in this life, and his flying ability was not bad. When the leopard was still dormant, he spread his wings and flew away. At the same time, he also gave up on the idea of calling out to Yolashanda. The forest was too dangerous. Ao Daisai was not only worried about his own safety, but also the safety of his partner. Before he found Yolashanda, Ao Daisai did not eat or drink. It was only when night fell and he could no longer ignore the hunger and fatigue that he stopped searching. He caught some small animals for himself, such as insects and ripe fruits. They were high in protein and vitamins. Ao Daisai preferred to eat fruits. There were many ripe fruits in the mountains in April. For example, there were clumps of raspberries under the tree. The ripe raspberries were bright red and had a very sweet taste. Or the more fruity loquat fruit, which emitted a fruity fragrance on the tree. In the depths of the forest in the dead of night, Ao Daisai stood on the loquat tree looking for ripe fruits to eat. Occasionally, other birds would land on the tree and want to share the fruits with him. They would all be shooed away by his wings. In Ao Daisai's heart, this loquat tree was already his territory. These fruits would be left for Little Bear to grow. But he did not know when he would be able to find Little Bear. Ao Daisai missed Little Bear, so he domineeringly marked out his territory. The experience of running around during the day made him tired and sleepy after eating. Peacocks, like domestic animals, like to find a safe place to sleep. Usually it was their own nest. This white peacock originally had nests too. Ao Daisai found the simple nest made by the other party based on the smell. At first glance, it was a young male peacock that had not learned the exquisite skills of building a nest. Ao Daisai was a little disgusted and reluctantly stayed for a night. Before he found Yolashanda, Ao Daisai did not have the mood to modify his nest. In the next few days, he left early and returned late, slowly expanding the scope of his search. There were many peacocks living in the wild, but they were all blue peacocks. Even the white peacock was a variant of the blue peacock. They had stronger vitality and longer lifespans. Most of them could live for more than 15 years. Ao Daisai searched the surrounding peacocks but did not find Yolashanda. It was not until he approached the building in the center of the reserve that he smelled the scent of another type of peacock. Ao Daisai was not afraid of humans. He could read and understand Chinese. In order to find Yolashanda, he openly walked into the center of the reserve. First, he came to the introduction board at the gate and looked up at the words on it. From the introduction, he knew that there were protected peacocks here. The staff on duty at the gate of the reserve saw a white peacock walking over from the window. Their hearts jumped to their throats. F*CK, white peacock, but none of them dared to speak. To be precise, they did not even dare to breathe. They were afraid that they would scare away the fairy. Oh no, the fairy. They only dared to communicate with their companions with their actions and mouths. They were all excited beyond words. This was a white peacock, a wild one. The staff all opened their personal terminals and took pictures and videos of the beautiful fairy. In the year 2065, communication equipment had been changed several times. Now, people were using superb personal terminals. They were powerful and had a variety of shapes. They could be bracelets, earrings, or rings. People could use their fingerprints or voice control to call out the light screen and do whatever they wanted. Countless cameras were aimed at Ao Daisai. Many staff in the center of the reserve even put down their work and rushed out to see the white peacock. Ao Daisai looked up and read the introduction of the reserve. He had a general understanding of the institution. Perhaps it was like the rescue station in Greenland, where there were animals that could not live independently in the wild. At this time, Ao Daisai's photos and videos had been posted in the internal group of the reserve. The whole reserve knew that a white peacock had come to the gate. Professor Han, who was busy, also clicked on the video to enjoy it. He smiled with relief. The biggest wish of these people was that these beautiful animals could live freely on this planet. This white peacock was strolling in the park. It was obviously very leisurely. Soon, there was a new message in the internal group. The white peacock was coming to the gate. He was coming in. The guard on duty in the reception room. Then, outsiders can't enter without a pass, but a beautiful white peacock wanted to come in. Did they dare to stop him? Of course not. Not only did they not dare to stop him, but they also held their breath and watched him enter. Oh, he's coming in, he's coming in. The group was wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. Comrades inside, pay attention. A little fairy is approaching you. Don't scare him. If you scare him away, I'll deduct your bonus. Good Lord, even the leader of the reserve came out. Where's this white peacock going? Ao Daisai didn't know where he was going. He had to follow the road signs. It was a place called Peacock Garden. It was quite far from the gate. The sun was shining brightly. A white peacock walked elegantly on the road. People who were paying attention to him quickly realized that he was going to Peacock Garden. Professor Han, oh my God, this is a textbook example of a peacock screen. Little Xianan has chosen the Peacock Garden. Come out and welcome him. Why is he going to Peacock Garden? Is it because he smelled the same species? It's the tail end of spring now. Seems like the breeding season is over. Professor Han and Professor He were shocked when they saw the news. At the same time, they were very happy. They weren't people who liked to join in on the fun. When they found out that the white peacock was at the gate, they were just secretly admiring the messages in the group. Now that he was at Peacock Garden, of course, they had to go out and welcome him. The two of them happily put down their work and went outside to watch. They could tell at one glance that the beautiful white peacock looked very young. He seemed to be less than 22 months old. Peacocks were sexually mature at 22 months, so the assumption that he was looking for a partner was not valid. Then what was he here for? Professor Han and Professor He followed behind the white peacock to where the green peacocks lived. They didn't dare to disturb him. At the reserve, 20 green peacocks lived around a beautiful lake. It was spacious and the environment was quiet. Ao Daisai's heart pounded when he arrived. He flapped his wings happily. His body's natural reaction told him that he would be able to find Yolanda soon. He walked along the lake and searched. Even the two professors behind him could tell that this white peacock seemed to be looking for something. Could it be that he was looking for a partner at such a young age? That was too enthusiastic. If only the green peacocks were half as enthusiastic as him. The two professors thought sadly. Ao Daisai searched all 20 peacocks and still couldn't find Yolanda. This was very unusual. After a while, Ao Daisai's gaze landed on the belly of a female peacock. Just then, the female peacock stood up and moved. A nest of eggs was revealed. The author has something to say. In the year 2065, welcome to continue watching Little Bear and Boss AO. P.S. Dan is a reality. Chapter 160. Peacock eggs were also known as mula glass eggs. The color of the peacock eggs was similar to duck eggs. They were ivory and light blue, and they were slightly bigger than duck eggs. Now, 6 eggs were lying quietly in the nest. The nest was exquisite and spacious. The parents looked like they were good at building nests. They should be quite old. In the natural world, male peacocks rarely help female peacocks raise the next generation. Most of them would leave after contributing their genes. In the sanctuary, the environment was safe and there was enough food. The female peacock's burden on raising babies was reduced, and the male peacocks did not care about the next generation. The female peacock stood up and stretched her wings, and then crawled back. Apparently, she was tired from lying on the nest and wanted to move around. Her gorgeous emerald green feathers covered the 6 peacock eggs tightly, isolating them from the gazes of those who harbored ill intentions. From the glimpse, Aodicei was sure that the little bear he was looking for was in the 6 eggs. But now, it was broad daylight, and there were 2 humans following him. He did not have the chance to steal the eggs. Aodicei thought for a while and flew to a nearby tree. He planned to wait until the night was quiet before taking action. When he spread his wings, he was very beautiful. The 2 professors could not help but record this scene. Although blue peacocks could be seen everywhere, white peacocks were still rare. The white peacock was recognized as the most ethereal species among all the peacocks. Its every movement was full of magnificence and nobility. When it stood on the tree and looked down at them from above, the feathers on its head made it look aloof and reserved. It's really beautiful. This is the peacock prince. This is the peacock prince. So beautiful, so beautiful. His eyes are killing me. Boo-hoo. The 2 professors shared the video of the white peacock flying to the tree in the group. Once again, it caused a lot of comments. The colleague from the publicity department said, "Do you mind if I collect these materials to make a promotional video?" The sanctuary had not made a good promotional video for a long time. This time, the material was so beautiful. The editors were eager to make a good promotional video. Of course, I don't mind. Please do it quickly. I want to see the official website update by today. The sanctuary had publicity accounts on various platforms. They usually released some content related to the sanctuary. Currently, the attention was only SOSO. It was not as popular as the elephant sanctuary next door. After the 2 professors took the photos, they saw the white peacock resting on the tree and did not move. So, they did not care about this precious guest. Let him stay here for the time being. If he wanted to stay here, he was welcome. They were relieved and left. After all, they still had work to do. As for whether the white peacock would fight with the green peacock, they were not worried. As everyone knew, the white peacock's fighting power was not as strong as the green peacock's. The green peacock was a bird of prey. The green peacock, as a gorgeous and dignified young master, it was already good enough that the white peacock was not bullied by the green peacock. Speaking of which, every frame of material collected today was so beautiful that it was difficult for the editor to choose. While editing the picture, he exclaimed countless times, "How did this wild white peacock grow?" And it was 2. Although he was beautiful, he did not lose his heroic spirit. Although he had incomparably gorgeous feathers, he did not make people feel that he was flashy at first glance. Being handsome was one thing, but more importantly, this white peacock's eyes were very sharp and steady. He dragged his gorgeous tail feathers behind him, and the aura he gave off was like a magnificent army with thousands of men and horses. At that moment, it seemed that even if a tiger came, it would not be able to make him back down. Other white peacocks with a pair of ruby eyes would only make people feel noble. This white peacock with a pair of ruby eyes was actually a bit breathtaking. The editors raced against time to make a promotional video. They could not wait to hand it over to their colleagues to release. The beautiful video was accompanied by a well-planned script. Hard work paid off. The number of views of the video was finally worthy of the white peacock's beauty. The script read, "A wild white peacock in the forest came from afar." Was it the fate of his previous life that led him to step into the hustle and bustle of the mortal world, or was it the guidance of last night's dream that invited him to be a guest? Comments. Good. Good. I declare that he is the peacock prince in my heart. Many people praised, but many people also raised doubts. Was this a real white peacock? Was it not synthesized by technology? Today's technology was very advanced. Anything could be synthesized by technology. It showed that the words natural and wild were very precious. Anything related to these words was recognized as rare. People had a special filter and feelings for it, because life was filled with too many artifacts, including lovers who were virtual. Virtual friends, virtual family, virtual pets. It seemed that everything was cold and had no temperature. The world had developed to this point. People did not know whether it was progress or backward. People were searching for happiness. If the video in front of them was really a wild white peacock, they would feel very happy. It is written in the script that the peacock is wild. The reserve will not lie. It is so good. He is not defensive against humans. He still believes in humans. I am so sorry. We have done so many bad things and sacrificed so many cute little creatures. I really hope we can still save them in time. Welcome to be our guest. Send money to the reserve. Let the reserve buy food to entertain the fairy. Send money. Buy delicious food for His Highness. The White Peacock promotional video harvested a wave of fans and rewards for the reserve. This data surprised the reserve. Their original intention for posting the video was very simple. They just wanted to share a rare beauty. They did not expect to gain so much. It was an unexpected surprise. All the employees were like on steroids. They shared the white peacock to their personal accounts. Although the work at the reserve was very boring and the location was very remote, it did not stop them from feeling proud. Night fell. After work, the two professors went to look for the white peacock under the tree. When they found that it was no longer there, they thought that it had flown away. Professor, he chuckled. She's such a free spirit. Professor Han also laughed. I heard that you gained a lot of fans today. Everyone is so happy. They are all asking Old Yang for a reward. Old Yang was the person in charge of the reserve. Unable to argue against everyone's heckling, he had already promised to buy fruit for everyone out of his own pocket. Yunnan fruit was delicious. There was long sunshine all year round. The temperature difference between day and night was large. All kinds of fruit were sweet. Ao Daisai did not leave. He was preparing to steal the peacock egg. The peacock egg was a bit big. He could not pick it up with his mouth alone. If Ao Daisai was a normal peacock, he would be stumped by this problem and be helpless. But he was not a normal peacock. He could skillfully use all kinds of human tools. For example, plastic bags. When it was late at night and the entire reserve seemed to be asleep, Ao Daisai rummaged through the various trash cans. Common items like plastic bags were easy to find. However, the bags currently in use were no longer plastic that was difficult to break down. Instead, they were made of a more environmentally friendly material. Ao Daisai had never touched a plastic bag before, so he doubted its sturdiness. He tore at it with his claws to make sure it was sturdy before using it. Green peacocks were indeed birds of prey. They were very aggressive and far beyond the white peacock's ability to fight. Fortunately, the female peacock had built the nest in a relatively remote area to protect her egg. She did not allow other peacocks to come close. Ao Daisai did not want to fight with the female peacock. He endured the female peacock's attacks and took out the egg he had his eyes on. He carefully placed it into the plastic bag. During this time, the female peacock pecked and clawed at him. She messed up the feathers on his back and even lost one of them. Ao Daisai did not even frown. If he had a frown, his goal would be the egg. The night was cold, and the peacock egg could not lose its warmth for too long. Ao Daisai took the peacock egg away from the center of the reserve as fast as he could. Before stealing the egg, he had already checked the location. 5 minutes later, the temporary thatched nest came in handy. Ao Daisai put the egg in the nest. Under the moonlight, the round egg was light green. The outer shell was covered with a layer of fluorescent light under the moonlight. It looked very cute. Ao Daisai could feel that the egg was alive. It was exuding a weak vitality that was calling out to his heart. After gazing at the egg for a few seconds, Ao Daisai quickly wrapped the egg with his warm belly. It was not that he had to steal the egg. It was just that he felt that the egg was losing its vitality. If he did not intervene, it might not even be able to hatch. How could Ao Daisai allow Yulashanda to die in the egg? He could only try his best to steal the egg and hatch it himself. Incubating 6 eggs in a nest was too much. Sometimes the temperature was not high enough. The eggs outside were easy to be neglected. Incubating 1 egg in a nest was good enough. All the warmth and energy was spent on 1 egg. He hoped that it would get better soon. The female peacock's egg was stolen. She was depressed and angry, so she cried out for a long time. When the staff arrived at the scene, the murderer had already escaped. Only a white feather was left at the scene. The next day, the staff reported the incident to the 2 professors in the peacock garden. They stared at the feather and fell into a daze. The staff member, who came to report the crime, had a twisted expression. He was extremely depressed. There were already very few peacock eggs. After last night, another one was missing. Now, he suspected that the white peacock had stolen the egg yesterday, although he really did not want to speculate like this. The white peacock was very beautiful and did not look like a bad person. Or rather, he did not want to accept that the white peacock had a moral flaw. Let's check the surveillance footage. The 2 professors who had been silent for a long time pinched the beautiful feather and looked at the surveillance footage. After looking at it, they found that the missing peacock egg was indeed taken by the white peacock. The other party was very smart. He even knew how to use a plastic bag. The 2 professors were shocked. Professor, he clicked his tongue. That bag was made of insulating material. What did he want to do with the egg? Was it for food? It should not be. Such a thing had never happened in nature. The male peacock was not interested in peacock eggs. Maybe he hasn't gone far. Let's go out and look for him. Professor Han thought for a while and immediately decided. The peacock egg was too precious. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, they would not let it go. The leaders of the peacock garden soon found out that the precious peacock egg had gone missing. Everyone was burning with anxiety. Search. Dig 3 feet into the ground to find it. Which bastard stole the peacock egg? The staff of the various departments were very angry. They could not help but curse. F***CK. How many peacock eggs are there in total? What a F***king bastard. Seeing that they were so angry, the staff of the peacock garden did not dare to tell them. Sorry, the bastard who stole the peacock egg is the white peacock that you were so obsessed with yesterday. This fact was too shocking. It was better to keep it a secret for now. However, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Soon, everyone knew that the bastard who stole the egg was the white peacock that gave them more fans and fruits. In the wild, after a night of careful care, Ao Daisai woke up from his nap. He found that the egg in his belly was still stable. At least, it did not get worse. In the female peacock's nest, the egg was at the edge of the nest and received limited care. Now, he was the only one. All the warmth belonged to him. Moreover, Ao Daisai's body temperature seemed to be higher. In the night of April, the entire thatched nest was warm. Every inch of the precious peacock egg was bathed in a comfortable temperature. This promoted his growth. One must know that before this, his growth was very slow and was not considered healthy. Ao Daisai was very worried about the little bear. He stayed close to the egg until the noon sun gave him enough warmth. Only then did he carefully stand up. The sunlight shone through the leaves into the nest. At noon, when the temperature was the highest, Ao Daisai temporarily left the nest to eat. He stood on the fruit tree and could see the nest if he turned his head. After all, this place was carefully chosen by him. There was no lack of food and drink around. If there were no large beasts here, Ao Daisai did not plan to move for the time being. The little bear's condition was still unstable. It was not suitable for him to move. After taking some time to settle his needs, Ao Daisai flew back to the nest as soon as possible and carefully protected the developing egg baby. Professor Han brought a few young people out to do a carpet search. Because the mountain road was difficult to walk on and they could not make any noise during the search, their progress was very slow. It was not until the afternoon that they finally saw a gorgeous tail feather from afar. Shoo! Professor Han raised a finger to his mouth, indicating that everyone should be quiet and not disturb the beautiful creature. Professor, what is he doing? Why is big white sky in the nest? Why is it not moving? The assistant asked in a very soft voice. I'm not sure. Professor Han had a ridiculous guess in his heart, but he did not dare to make a conclusion. He opened the middle terminal and pulled out the camera. In the high-tech era, the camera was not only hidden but also retractable. Of course, if it was a human being, the other party's terminal would alert them that the camera was filming them. If it violated the privacy of others, there would be serious consequences. Ao Daisai, who was hugging the nest, thought, so animals have no right to privacy? Professor Han extended the camera and first checked the surroundings of the male white peacock's nest. Fortunately, he did not find anything like the eggshell. Assuming that the other party did not eat the egg, then where was the egg now? Everyone's palms were sweating. One was because the sun was hot, and the other was because they were nervous and irritated. What should they do? They definitely could not do anything to the peacock, even if the other party really did steal the egg. He was a heinous criminal. Professor, is the egg really gone? Thinking of the little peacock that had been hatched with great difficulty and died prematurely, everyone present was extremely worried. It was too difficult, too difficult. Professor Han shook his head and did not know what to say. He wanted to say that the egg might be under the white peacock's belly, but even he did not dare to believe it. He had studied peacocks for many years, and there was no precedent of a male peacock incubating an egg, not to mention incubating an egg of a different species. He was overthinking. However, Professor Han did not give up and tried to move the camera closer. Ao Daisai already knew that there were humans approaching it. It felt that the other party was the group of people from the reserve, so it was too lazy to care. However, later on, the humans said something like the egg was gone. This deeply angered Ao Daisai, who loved eggs. It finally opened its eyes and turned its head to look. The camera captured its unhappy side profile, and at the same time, it also captured its very standard posture of incubating the egg. If it was not, the white peacock would have flown away immediately after being disturbed. However, when it turned its head and revealed a murderous look, it meant that there was indeed an egg in its belly. Professor Han, who was carefully moving forward, almost stumbled and fell out. He was very sorry. He disturbed the peacock prince who was hugging his nest. The author has something to say. Otis, your balls are gone. My balls are fine. Chapter 161. Although that was what he said, Han Shirsui's mind was in turmoil. He still had doubts. How could a male peacock carry a nest? What a fantasy. Han Shirsui, be careful. The mountain ground was rugged and there was a risk of falling. The colleagues behind him did not care about disturbing the white peacock and quickly went forward to support Han Shirsui. They also asked him what he saw from the camera and if he found the missing egg. 80% of it is in his nest. The handsome Han Shirsui wiped the sweat off his forehead. The he was referring to was the white peacock. The colleagues were stunned and stuttered. You mean in the white peacock's nest? But how is that possible? Why is it impossible? Otherwise, why would he take the egg? Han Shirsui asked. He had already calmed down. They had been here for so long, but the white peacock did not fly away. This was not in line with the peacock's habits. Peacocks in the wild were difficult to get close to. Of course, the white peacock had openly wandered to the center of the reserve yesterday. It could also be said that he was more extroverted, but he had a purpose yesterday. He went there to steal the egg. Ao Daisai felt the whispers and shock of these people. He knew that humans liked to study animals. In the past, when he was a polar bear and a lion, he had been studied a lot. According to Lashanda, humans were curious about everything in the world and tried to get answers to all their questions. Ao Daisai thought to himself, if you want a standard answer, stop studying me. He would be the only male peacock in the world to hatch an egg. But this cannot be blamed on him. It could only be said that the situation forced him. Although he did not know the final reason for the extinction of the green peacock, Ao Daisai felt a knife in his heart. Even if he took the egg from the female peacock, He was not sure if Yolashanda could grow up smoothly. Ao Daisai was depressed. He did not pay attention to what the humans were doing. He just leaned his head against the nest. His luxurious and graceful figure seemed to be shrouded in a faint haze. What's wrong with him? There was worry in the human's voice. Although he knew that the white peacock was not weak, he did not dare to disturb him. Sure, Sway, what should we do? Since they had confirmed that the egg was in the white peacock's nest, what should they do? Han Shichuan pursed his lips. A male peacock hugging its nest was an unprecedented sight. To be honest, he really wanted to study it. However, such a consequence might mean sacrificing a precious peacock egg, which was a very difficult choice to make. There were only 1 or 2 eggs in a nest. What if the egg that was in the best condition was the one that the white peacock stole? Let me discuss this with the other instructors. Due to the urgency of the situation, Han Yu decided to hold a video conference on the spot regarding the white peacock's nest. The instructors were all seniors in the peacock domain. It was their first time seeing wild white peacocks steal eggs and nest, so they were naturally very interested. Thus, he considered the following points. This peacock egg had already left the nest once. Even if it was in good condition, it wouldn't be able to withstand a second toss. It was better to leave it in its current nest. Secondly, peacock research had not made any progress for a long time. Perhaps this was a major breakthrough, and it would be unwise to kill it now. Thirdly, they couldn't just take the egg away, but they could find a way to test the condition of the egg. To this, Han Yu's response was, "I'm very familiar with this nest of peacock eggs. The missing one is not in good condition." Everyone nodded. The next step was to test the egg's current condition. Although Ao Daisai was not in a good mood, he heard the contents of the meeting clearly. This group of humans was quite responsible. Considering the peacock's diet, the young men immediately installed food troughs and water troughs around the nest. At the same time, they also installed surveillance cameras. It wasn't to watch the male peacock hatch the eggs, but for his safety. If he encountered a large beast, he could still rescue him in time. Although there were many blue peacocks, they were far from being protected animals. However, there were very few white peacocks. Furthermore, he was hatching green peacocks. A father's status depended on his son. Of course, everyone thought that it would be strange if the eggs could hatch. Even female peacocks couldn't guarantee that every egg would hatch. How could this male white peacock? It couldn't be because of its beauty. Ao Daisai also wanted to know how the egg was doing, so he left the nest and flew to another tree, pretending to eat something. Sure enough, there was an egg lying quietly in the dry and airy thatched nest. Han Yu and the others found the opportunity and immediately went forward to test it. For a moment, Han Yu wanted to change his mind and take the egg back, but was only for a moment. This was the second time he tested the egg's condition. Strangely, it seemed to be better than before. Of course, it was normal for it to develop better as time went on. However, it was a luxury for them. In many cases, the more a peacock egg developed, the worse it became. This was no longer a problem of the environment or technology, but a genetic defect that could not be solved. The major environmental pollution of the past few decades had caused irreversible damage to creatures all over the world. The egg's condition is very good. Han Yu smiled because of the excellent data. To be honest, he really didn't want to put the egg back in the nest. The colleague next to him joked, "Then it seems that this male peacock is quite good at hugging the nest." Han Yu's heart trembled, and he put the egg back. It was fine to say that he was superstitious, but this matter was really hard to explain. What if the egg was really better because of the white peacock? From their conversation, Ao Daisai learned about Yolashanda's situation. He was very glad that it was not as bad as he thought. He stretched his wings happily. The afternoon sun that was beginning to fall on him was unusually beautiful. The humans heard the noise and quickly packed up and left to avoid the peacock's anger. Ao Daisai was in a good mood. He returned to the nest and rubbed his cheek against the cute egg baby. Great, his Yolashanda was very healthy. It was just that it was still too young and did not respond to his call. Yes, Xiao Qishi sank into a dark dream. His soul did not die, but there were many things that needed to be built slowly. For example, cell division development, heart, etc. These all needed to be done slowly. Before this, he, who had no one to rely on, could only fall into a deep sleep. During this period, he had a vague feeling. At the beginning, the feeling was not good. It was as if he was weightless in space and had no one to rely on. Without a clear thought, his subconscious was shrouded by a cloud of negative emotions and gradually began to dissipate. At this time, the egg was in the worst state and almost lost its vitality. Fortunately, there was a turning point. Later, the scorching temperature passed through the eggshell and into the developing egg, warming the egg. At the same time, it also dispelled all the negative emotions. Well, if the egg had emotions. In short, everything was developing in a good direction. The cells that were slow to divide began to become active. They worked day and night without stopping. Finally, in the shortest time possible, red blood vessels appeared inside the egg. That was the beginning of life. A.O. Daisai seemed to have felt something. He was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes were filled with love. Generally, wild animals, especially birds, would not easily accept human food. However, through the camera, the white peacock was very rude. It was indeed an independent peacock. Since the video about the white peacock was released that day, fans have been calling for more videos and updates. The reserve also wanted to update the video quickly, but it couldn't. Even though they understood the fans' desire to see the fairy, in order to avoid the pressure of public opinion, the reserve would not disclose the fact that the white peacock was incubating eggs for the time being. After all, the reserve gave the peacock egg to the male peacock to incubate, which was really a lot of pressure. If it failed, it might be scolded and become a hot topic. Han Shisho was under the most pressure. He was really worried about the situation of the peacock egg. On the third day after the camera was installed, he couldn't help but go to the reserve again. The white fairy was still so graceful and beautiful. Standing on a tree, she turned her head and slowly tidied up the feathers on her back. It seemed that she had just finished eating. There was a lazy and satisfied atmosphere. After seeing him, she just lazily lifted her eyelids. Her eyes seemed to warn him not to play tricks. The egg baby was bathed in the warm sun. However, the sun did not directly expose the nest. Instead, it poured down through layers of leaves. The location of the nest was very reasonable. Han Shisho couldn't help admiring this careful male peacock. He faintly felt that the male peacock had poured obvious love into the egg. What a guy with overflowing fatherly love. Han Shisho thought warmly in his heart and smiled. As a researcher who loved animals for more than 10 years, he was always inadvertently cured by animals. This was why they all loved animals. Well, let me help you check today's situation. The remaining 5 eggs in the peacock garden were stable. After checking, Han Shisho was itching to think about the one stolen by the white peacock. He didn't know how it was doing. A.O. Daisai also wanted to know, so he allowed the human to touch Dan. During the process, he watched closely. Han Shisho whispered, "The heart and other organs have developed. It is reasonable to say that the embryo should move. Do you feel it?" Of course, the white peacock couldn't answer him. It just looked very attentive. "Take good care of it," Han Shisho instructed. Before he left, he added water and food. He felt like a visiting pediatrician, but he was serving a stay-at-home dad. The egg baby had not yet moved. A.O. Daisai, who was originally in a good mood, was worried by Han Shisho's words. Under the sun, he used his beak to push the egg. Was the little cutie sleeping inside? Why wasn't it moving? If it wasn't for the faint heartbeat that constantly affected his heart, A.O. Daisai would have sunk into depression. The incubation process was like this. His mood fluctuated. One moment, he was worried about the delay in development. The next moment, he was worried about the lack of fetal movement. A.O. Daisai crawled in the nest. His heart was filled with worry. That's right, the little cutie was still sleeping. However, he was very happy that it had moved from deep sleep to light sleep. Because its organs had developed, its soul had a support. The light sleep state was accompanied by unconscious fetal movement. Under normal circumstances, the other eggs would move. Perhaps because Xiao Qishi was lazy, he didn't move. On the 10th day, of Ao Daisai's incubation, he began to develop feather tissue. He finally turned over in the eggshell. As he became stronger, his heartbeat slowly became stronger. Thump, thump, thump. The small embryo that was curled into a ball slowly turned over. Ao Daisai was awakened by this movement in the middle of the night. His eyes shone brightly, as if he was hit by a great joy. He held his breath and didn't dare to move. It was as if he was waiting for the egg baby's second movement. Unfortunately, the egg baby was as lazy as Yulashanda. It moved once in the middle of the night, and that was the amount of exercise it did for the whole day. What a lazy bug. Ao Daisai waited for a whole day, but Yulashanda didn't move again. However, it didn't matter. His anxiety could be cured by the little cutie turning over. Slowly, it was half a month after the incubation. Xiao Qishi finally became active. His chaotic consciousness gradually became clear. However, he was still very weak and couldn't communicate with the outside world. He only knew that he was nestled in a small space. It was warm and cozy. Sometimes he would be awake, but before he could think about anything, he would fall asleep again. A strong heartbeat that was at the same frequency as his own. It was so familiar and gave him a sense of security. Xiao Qishi didn't need to think to know who was accompanying him. He was overjoyed. After the previous life, they had a new life. However, he didn't know what it was this time. Actually, he had already vaguely guessed that this small space should be an egg. Xiao Qishi thought in fear. Could it be a poultry this time? It's over, it's over. Could it be that Ao Daisai was reincarnated into a farm together? What a brilliant but short life. He didn't know if they would be steamed or fried in the end. Ao Daisai was very happy that Yulashanda had become lively and active. He guarded her even more closely. Sometimes he didn't even have time to eat. The last time Han Shishao came to visit was on the 26th day of incubation. He was in a very bad mood. This morning, 2 eggs hatched one after another in Peacock Garden. Unfortunately, one of them only stayed outside for an hour. The other was not in a good condition either. It was hard to say if it could live for more than a week. They had met several times in the past 20 days. Ao Daisai was very familiar with this human. He could feel the sadness in his heart. Ao Daisai stared at him quietly. He couldn't comfort him. The words natural selection were deeply engraved in Ao Daisai's mind. As a beast, Ao Daisai would not be sad for a life that was eliminated. However, Ao Daisai, who was intelligent, sympathized with this. He could understand all the sadness in this world. The little baby will hatch in the next 2 days. You have to be careful. Sai, I'm really afraid that you don't have any experience. Han Shishao reminisced about the little peacock who had left for a while and focused his mind. He was not afraid. He was very afraid. The conditions in the garden were so good, but the little peacock couldn't survive. Could this male mother, who had no experience in parenting, really take care of the little peacock? Regarding this doubt, the white peacock arrogantly ignored him. Therefore, Han Shishao made a choice that made the male mother depressed. The other party actually set up a tent here and didn't leave. His colleagues in Peacock Gardens were shocked. Wonderful. Why didn't we think of this before? Not bad. This is a good idea. Ao Daisai, the author, has something to say. The little baby is about to hatch. I need nutrient solution. I'm going to update twice today. Chapter 162. Ao Daisai, who had been a beast for many years, thought to himself, am I too weak to hold a knife? Or are you guys too arrogant? Neither. If he had to blame something, he could only blame himself for not being a beast in this life. In the past, when he was a polar bear and a lion, it was impossible for humans to get within 10 meters of him. Whenever Ao Daisai yawned, even the cameraman would tremble. Now he was just a peacock without fangs and a strong body. His pair of claws could barely be considered as sharp claws, but they were held back by his gorgeous feathers and petite body. These claws could not be used at all. How could Ao Daisai not be depressed? The difference was too great. If he could, he even wanted to cut off the cumbersome tail feathers behind him. What was the use of being beautiful? It would only drag him down during battle. The peacock egg hatched after 26 to 30 days. Ao Daisai indeed had no experience in raising children. When the humans informed him that the baby was about to hatch, he became nervous. Ignoring the humans who shamelessly stayed behind to watch, Ao Daisai focused all his attention on the baby egg. He was so focused that he did not even eat or drink. Professor Han was the first to notice this situation. He was a little surprised. This white peacock was quite a good father. Could it be that he also sensed that the little peacock was about to hatch? Ao Daisai thought, "You told me that, however, not eating or drinking was not an option. If he was too thin and weak, he would fall sick. How would he take care of the little peacock then?" Professor Han, who was a man of few words, became long-winded and annoying in front of the peacock. "How can you not eat? Go and eat something. If you fall sick, how will you take care of the child?" Ao Daisai felt that he was very healthy. Also, this human was too noisy. He raised his eyes and glanced at Professor Han with a cold gaze. Professor Han did not understand that the peacock was asking him to shut up. He thought that the white peacock was listening to him carefully. TSK, what a handsome peacock. He was stunned. He thought that the white peacock must have good genes. The offspring would be very beautiful. If only the green peacock had such vitality. Don't be nervous. If the egg does not hatch after 30 days, you will need to help it. Do you understand? It's very simple. Use your beak to help pierce the sharp end of the egg. Pay attention, it's the sharp end. Professor Han repeated it 2 or 3 times because he was bored and there were no colleagues around. The only person he could talk to was this peacock with a unique personality. He was very happy to get along with her. This was a very rare opportunity. If it was possible, he would even want to touch it with his hands. However, this was a special period. It was better to keep a certain distance. Ao Daisai listened attentively to the instructions on how to hatch the eggs. No matter how many times the man repeated the instructions, he did not lose his patience. Professor Han only felt that the peacock had a good temper, a dignified temperament, and elegant behavior. It was very different from all the peacocks he had seen before. It was too charming. Whether it was from a personal preference or from a scientific point of view, Professor Han felt that the behavior of this white peacock was very valuable for research. He observed carefully and took many photos and videos. At present, he could only come to one conclusion. This white peacock must be the king of the peacock world. Smart, beautiful, calm, and steady. If there was a chance, he really wanted to see how she looked like in battle. Actually, it would be best if they never fought, even if they were of the same kind. Perhaps the white peacock was too anxious. On the first morning of Professor Han's stay, he saw a feather scattered by the nest. It was the long kind. "Look, you've already shed your feathers. Why aren't you eating or drinking?" Professor Han immediately picked up the feather. It looked like it had fallen off naturally. The whole feather retained its luster. It was a natural work of art. It was too annoying. The humans woke up early in the morning and started to chatter nonstop. Ao Daisai reluctantly flew out of the nest and ate some food and water. In fact, letting the eggs dry occasionally was the correct way to hatch them. In the later stages of artificial incubation, they even had to spray water on the eggshell to help the baby break the shell. The change in temperature outside stimulated Xiao Qishi, who had been staying in a comfortable environment, to wake up. Recently, he felt that he was awake for more and more time. Occasionally, he could hear some external sounds, but they were very vague. In the middle of the night, Ao Daisai called out to him attentively. It whispered "little bear, little cutie," as if it was not to get a response, but because it was lonely. Xiao Qishi really wanted to respond, but he was very, very weak and did not have enough energy to support it. It seemed that telepathy also consumed energy. He did not dare to act recklessly. The most important thing now was to store energy and ensure that he grew strong so that he could successfully break the shell. In the 2 days before the shell broke, Xiao Qishi felt even more uncomfortable moving. Sometimes, he even felt that his claws were against the eggshell, as if he could break the eggshell with a kick. Then, he tried and found that this was one of the 3 biggest illusions in life. The eggshell was very strong, and his claws could not break it at all. The beak was also well developed. This was also an important weapon for him to break the shell in the future. When he was awake, Xiao Qishi was very careful to test it. He found that his beak was very weak and it hurt after a few hits. It turned out that it was so difficult to give birth to a small animal. It needed to struggle and endure the pain. Therefore, after breaking the shell, it was always chattering and cursing because of the pain. Oh no, it was cursing the eggshell. During the growth process, the hard eggshell was a fortress that protected the baby. When it was about to break the shell, the eggshell became an obstacle. Xiao Qishi was afraid of pain. After trying a few times, he found that he could not do it at all. Then he started whining. Forget it. He planned to let himself develop for 2 more days. Wrapped in the eggshell, the baby's eyes were tightly shut. His world was dark. The only perception of the outside world was the temperature and some faint sounds. Oh, it was still Ao Daisai's heartbeat. Suddenly, Ao Daisai's heartbeat left. Xiao Qishi, who was awake, felt uncomfortable. Then, the temperature dropped, letting him know that Ao Daisai had temporarily left him. Did he go to eat? Or did something happen? Previously, Xiao Qishi guessed that the place he was staying at was a farm. However, he later refuted this unreliable guess. If it was really a farm, which farm would be so stupid as to allow a male to be in charge of incubating the eggs? Sooner or later, the farm would close down. Xiao Qishi did not feel safe at all. As she was more energetic, she used all her strength to call out to Otis, "Come back quickly." Ao Daisai ate very quickly and came back after a while. He was stunned and suspected that he had heard a very faint sound. Of course, this wasn't a real voice, but a voice in his heart. Other than him, no one else could hear it. Is it Little Bear? Ao Daisai had been waiting for this moment for far too long. Her ruby eyes shone brightly. Clearly, his Yulashanda was coming back. Happily spreading its wings, Ao Daisai gently laid on top of the egg and continued to wait patiently. At the same time, he couldn't help but keep talking to her. "Yulashanda, are you okay?" Thinking of a human's words, Ao Daisai asked, "Do you need my help?" It was already the 27th day. According to the talkative human, another peacock egg in the peacock garden had hatched. If Little Bear hatched today, it would be number 4. Xiao Qishi didn't reply to Ao Daisai because he had fallen asleep again. This sleep would help him accumulate enough strength. The sun rose on the 28th day. It was early summer, and the sun was shining brightly every day. Xiao Qishi also woke up on this comfortable morning. He felt that his body was full of energy, and he could even challenge himself to kick open the eggshell. However, after scratching the eggshell with his claws for a long time, he still felt that the chances of breaking the eggshell were as high as the chances of breaking the eggshell. Ao Daisai. A very faint voice echoed in Ao Daisai's heart. His whole body trembled. He poked his head out of his wings and blinked hard. Yulashanda was calling him. "Yes, I'm here, little cutie." Ao Daisai immediately responded to the voice that was so cute that it made every single one of his feathers tremble. It seemed that after becoming a baby, Yulashanda's voice had also become childish. It was even more childish than when Little Bear was still a baby. Ao Daisai liked it. Xiao Qishi was very happy that the communication was successful. However, it was very tiring to communicate. He clearly felt that today's plan to export had failed again. "Then let's chat for a while." Ao Daisai couldn't hear anything and immediately asked, "Are you okay?" "Xiao Qishi, I'm okay. Were we this time?" This was very important. The answer would determine whether he chose to be born or not. If it was really a farm contestant, then forget it. Whoa. Ao Daisai seemed to be able to guess Little Bear's weird thoughts. In order to encourage Little Bear to work hard to break the eggshell, he gave a very cunning answer. "It's a beautiful peacock with beautiful snow-white feathers. Just like what you said, it's a fairy that accidentally came down to earth." Wow. Xiao Qishi and Ao Daisai had met a white peacock in the mountains before. He had praised it like this before. He didn't expect Ao Daisai to remember. What a good memory. And the white peacock was awesome. No one in the world ate peacock meat. Xiao Qishi's wish to be born up. Up. Was it raised in captivity or wild? Of course it was wild. Ao Daisai chose not to tell him that he was originally an egg laid by a peacock raised in captivity. But since it had been brought out by a wild peacock, it was wild. Hearing this, Xiao Qishi had already decided to work hard to break the eggshell. He liked this configuration. Woo-woo, when are you going to break the eggshell? Ao Daisai's emotions were calm. He tried not to let his anxiety affect the baby who was still in the embryo, even though he really wanted to meet him soon. Xiao Qishi rested for a moment and replied weakly, I thought I could try today, but aren't I tired now? Ao Daisai, it's okay. Let's wait for tomorrow. After a long silence, Ao Daisai heard Yulishanda complain in a childish voice, the eggshell is so hard. I tried it yesterday and my mouth hurt. Puff, puff. Ao Daisai's heart ached. Separated by a layer of eggshell, he could only comfort him like this. And claws. Xiao Qishi hummed. And puff, puff, and claw. Ao Daisai was extremely affectionate. He was as gentle as the early summer morning breeze. It was as if the pain on Xiao Qishi's mouth and claws had been blown away. After chatting for a while, the little bear, who had insufficient energy, was tired again. When Ao Daisai's gentleness was no longer reciprocated, he knew that the little bear might have fallen asleep. The little guy still hadn't broken the eggshell on the 28th day. Professor Han was very anxious. Of course, the remaining peacock eggs in the peacock garden didn't break the eggshell on this day either. The professors communicated online for a long time. They felt the atmosphere enter a white-hot state. Fortunately, the little guy who had hatched yesterday was in good spirits. He had a loud voice and a strong appetite. The professors thought that with careful care, he would survive. Professor, Old Han, now it's up to you and the last one left here. If both of them can hatch, this nest will be quite good. Professor Han was nervous. Wait, on the morning of the 29th day of hatching, Ao Daisai woke up early. Today was the day he and the little bear had agreed to hatch. He flew to the stone trough to eat something and drink some water. Lastly, he washed his face with water. It hadn't rained recently, so there was no way to take a shower unless he left the nest and flew to the lake. Ao Daisai felt like his body was about to rot. He really wanted to take a shower before meeting the little bear, but the conditions didn't allow it. The most he could do was wash his face. Professor Han was secretly surprised that the white peacock suddenly ate on its own. At that moment, he was sitting at the small table, eating breakfast and reading a book. Breakfast was very normal bread with jam and a carton of milk. When Ao Daisai flew nearby, he smelled the jam. This was the little bear's favorite food. When he returned to the grass nest, Ao Daisai couldn't hold back anymore. He nudged the egg with his head to shake the little cutie who was still sleeping in. Yulishanda, hurry up and get up. It's time for you to hatch. Ao Daisai urged softly. It was dangerous to stay in the egg forever. The little baby would suffocate to death. As expected, Xiao Qishi was shaken awake, but he was still sleepy. He grumbled weakly. Sleep for another half an hour. The sun was shining on his butt. Ao Daisai didn't agree because he knew this was the little bear's little trick of wanting to sleep. After half an hour, there would be countless half an hour. At this rate, he wouldn't be able to hatch in 30 days. Don't you want to see me? If you want to, you can come out and see me now. Ao Daisai's voice seemed to have the ability to bewitch people. He said helplessly, if you're really sleepy, then sleep for another 5 minutes. Xiao Qishi, of course, wanted to see Ao Daisai as soon as possible. The temptation of being able to see each other immediately was too great. Dan, who was dozing off just now, immediately became energetic. He said heroically, I must hatch today. Ao Daisai was full of encouragement. Yes, go for it. In order to not let the little bear feel pressured, he also said, if it's too painful, there's no need to force yourself. I can help you. It would have been better if he didn't say that. When he said that he wanted to help Xiao Qishi, he couldn't. Ha. He raised his paw and kicked, but the sturdy eggshell didn't move. What was going on? Yulishanda didn't believe it. He raised his other paw and kicked again. Damn it, it still didn't move. Of course, it could be a problem of uneven force. It might be better to use his beak to chisel. Xiao Qishi immediately did what he said. He mustered his courage and chiseled the eggshell. Then he felt dizzy. Sob, sob, sob. His head was dizzy and his fragile little mouth hurt. Ao Daisai stood by the nest and stared at the baby egg's movements. The baby egg seemed to have used all its strength to shake twice, and then there was no movement. Little bear? He leaned closer and tilted his head to listen to the other party's movements. Baby egg covered in bruises. Sob, I'm tired. Ao Daisai sighed softly. Then, without asking for the little cutie's opinion, he lowered his head and gently pecked the tip of the egg. He was very careful. He didn't chisel it the first time. The second time, he chiseled a gap. Try again. Xiao Qishi. Hearing the sound of the eggshell cracking above his head, he was furious. Ah, shut up, you can't help. This guy is too reckless. Annoying. Xiao Qishi solemnly said to Ao Daisai, You're not allowed to peck my eggshell again. I'll come out on my own. Aren't you spoiling the seedling? A little peacock born like this is not healthy. It's okay. He only pecked a gap. The rest depends on Yulashanda. Hearing Yulashanda's noise in the eggshell, Ao Daisai was stunned. He thought to himself, You'll definitely be a healthy little peacock. Isn't he full of energy? The camera saw the white peacock pecking the egg. Professor Han immediately received a message. The people inside were very excited. Old Han, look. He's starting to peck the egg. It's amazing. Can a male peacock also sense that the baby is about to break out of the shell? As a male peacock, how does he know that the baby needs help? There were too many questions that troubled everyone. I saw it. Professor Han was staring intently. He even held his breath. He saw the white peacock peck twice and stop. It seemed to be waiting for the little baby to climb out on its own. However, the little baby didn't live up to expectations. It didn't move for a long time. Yes, because Xiao Qishi was tired again, and his mouth still hurt. He whined to Ao Daisai, Why don't you help me again? Anyway, pecking once is pecking twice is pecking. Ao Daisai blinked and gently rejected. No, little cutie, can you work hard on your own? Xiao Xiao pout. JPG. Chapter 163. It was not easy for a healthy egg to break out of its shell, let alone a weak peacock egg. It was already a big step for it to be able to break out of its shell. This process undoubtedly required patience. Ao Daisai was very patient. He restrained his urge to help and gave the opportunity to Yulashanda. There was only a small crack in the egg, and the air chamber was not broken yet. The fetus was still wrapped in liquid and had not yet breathed in air. It was Xiao Qishi's first time being an egg-born animal. He did not have a clear understanding of the process of breaking out of its shell. He only followed his instincts and used his beak to poke open the membrane. The crack in the eggshell widened because of his actions. The light pink beak tried to poke out of the eggshell, and the two holes on it tried to breathe in the first breath of air after birth. Ao Daisai's heart melted when he saw the little mouth. He carefully advised, Don't worry, you will not be in danger if you breathe smoothly. You can wait for the egg to dry and then slowly climb out. The wet beak touched the air, and the liquid on the surface slowly dried. It looked harder. Xiao Qishi, whose eyes were still closed, rested his beak in the crack. The observing humans were very anxious. Although they knew the process would take a long time, they would not be at ease if they did not see the little peacock come out safely. He could not even eat or sleep well. Some of the remaining liquid in the egg flowed out from the crack, and some was absorbed by Xiao Qishi. At noon, when the sun was at its brightest, he had accumulated enough energy and started to break the eggshell. The cracked eggshell was easier to deal with. It cracked with one chisel and cracked with one chisel. Xiao Qishi seemed to have obsessive-compulsive disorder. He raised his head and chiseled a round piece on top of his head. Then he stuck his head out of the eggshell and laid on the edge of the egg. His eyes, which were bathed in the sunlight, were stimulated and opened slightly. The little peacock's eyes took up almost 1/3 of his head. He was curiously looking at the outside world. Of course, the first thing he saw was the gorgeous white feathers. The adult white peacock was too big for a newborn. He needed to raise his head to see the other party's face, and the eggshell on his head fell off. A small head with a tuft of tender, yellow hair peeked out. It was quite big compared to the rest of the body and was a little bald. However, it was chubby all over and looked very cute. Witnessing the birth of his partner, Ao Daisai was very excited. However, words could not express his feelings. He lowered his head and looked at the baby carefully. Then, he rubbed his cheek against the baby's head to express his affection. "Welcome. Come to this world, Yulashanda." "Wow." Xiao Qishi was stunned. He exclaimed, "Ao Daisai, you're so beautiful." Ao Daisai, who was praised, folded its wings and felt a little embarrassed. It was all the species' fault. "Well, you'll look just as good when you grow up." Ao Daisai didn't want to become a white peacock because the little bear had a unique sense of beauty. Would she still look as good when she grew up? Xiao Qishi suddenly thought of something and widened her eyes in horror. No way, right? What he was thinking was, where did this egg come from? Did Ao Daisai give birth to it with another white peacock? Wasn't he too tired before? He had forgotten to talk about this. Of course, he was very tired now, but he had to clarify this matter. "Ao Daisai, where did I come from?" Xiao Qishi leaned on the eggshell and asked. It was as if he was squatting in a bathtub. "I picked it up from another peacock's nest." Ao Daisai said directly. He sounded very righteous and didn't think there was anything wrong with it at all. Xiao Qishi was about to faint. He wanted to say, "You didn't pick it up, you snatched it." Wasn't it snatching? At that time, he even fought with a female peacock and lost a feather. "How do you feel now?" Ao Daisai really didn't take the matter of snatching the egg to heart. In his heart, the little bear was his whether it became an egg or something else. Right now, he only cared about the safety of the other party. Everything else didn't seem to be important. All right, nature was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. There wasn't much morality to speak of. Xiao Qishi also didn't pursue the matter of his birth. As long as he wasn't Ao Daisai's child, it was fine. Pretty good. Xiao Qishi tried his best to open his mouth and call out. His voice was very crisp and tender, a little like a little chick. The newborn peacock was indeed not much different from a chick. The sparse hair on his body was light yellow. It was just that Xiao Qishi's hair was stuck together and wasn't fluffy yet. Because of his call, Ao Daisai's eyes flashed. Oh, the newborn Yulashanda was really cute. When the humans heard this tender call, they knew that the baby peacock had successfully hatched. They couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. The rate of hatching in this nest was very high. 2 of the eggs had already hatched. They didn't know what would happen to this one. Based on the probability, it was very dangerous. Everyone zoomed in on the image. The little darling was still soaking in his eggshell. No, wait, why was his eggshell so neat? He's so cute. He looks like a dessert. A staff member who had seen similar designs at a dessert shop couldn't help blurting out. Although the comparison wasn't appropriate, it was true. "Professor," he said, "the little fella's hair is a little sparse. There are only a few tufts on his head and back, but he seems to be in good condition." Honestly, it was a miracle that the stolen egg had hatched at all. Indeed, he's in good condition. Professor Han, who was on the front line, had sweat on his forehead and palms. It was clear how nervous he had been earlier. This male peacock is very maternal. He helped the baby hatch and is very attentive to it. To be honest, some of the female peacocks in Peacock Garden weren't as maternal as this male peacock. It could only be said that it was fate. Right now, Xiao Qishi was like a chubby pink ball. His body rose and fell visibly with his breathing and heartbeat. He really wanted to know what he looked like. Did he look like Gollum from The Hobbit? He was completely bald except for a few tufts of hair. When he asked Ao Daisai, the other party replied seriously, "He's very cute." Xiao Qishi thought, "Like hell I believe you. I can already see my hairless tummy. It's really ugly." The adult white peacock stood by the nest and used his body to block the sun for the fragile baby. Although Xiao Qishi was bald now, he would grow a layer of hair in a couple of days. Legend had it that egg-laying animals ate their own eggshells after they were born, but this was a rumor. The eggshells were so stiff, and the baby's stomach was so fragile. How could it digest the eggshells? In the evening, Xiao Qixi, who had rested enough, crawled out of the eggshell. His fragile skin came into direct contact with the straw nest. Luckily, the layer of straw was very soft and couldn't hurt him at all. During this time, Ao Daisai watched over him without blinking and didn't go anywhere. In the eyes of humans, this stay-at-home dad was crazy. He only had eyes for the newborn baby and nothing else. Everyone couldn't help but tease him. Haha, we all thought we were nervous enough about the little peacock. We didn't expect this white peacock to be even better. The good-natured jokes made the atmosphere more relaxed. In order to celebrate the successful birth of the little peacock, they had to add a drumstick for dinner. Ao Daisai, aren't you hungry? Xiao Qixi yawned in the nest. He couldn't stand up yet and could only lie down softly. Ao Daisai had been here for a day, and it was going to be dark soon. He should go eat something. Are you hungry? Ao Daisai didn't seem to think of himself at all. He only thought that Xiao Qixi was hungry. Then wait for me here. While the white peacock went out to look for food, the researchers immediately came out to take a few precious photos. Originally, Professor Han planned to leave after the little peacock successfully hatched. However, looking at the chubby baby, a fire burned in his heart. What a cute little life, trying so hard to live under so many expectant gazes. If this little guy didn't survive, he would be depressed. There wasn't much in the forest except for small insects. The food that Ao Daisai brought for the newborn baby was bee pupae. There were several white and fat ones. This was the most suitable food for the little baby. He flew to the nest and coaxed. Open your mouth. Xiao Qixi had been busy the whole day. He really felt that he needed to replenish his energy, so he obediently opened his mouth. During this time, he didn't open his eyes. He didn't know what Ao Daisai fed him. He only knew that it was soft and slippery. It slipped down his throat in an instant. Although he was curious about what it was, Xiao Qixi felt that it was better not to ask. If it was something that he couldn't accept, wouldn't he starve to death? He was still young, so he was full after eating a little. Ao Daisai flew twice and found that he didn't eat, so he ate some himself. There were many bee pupae in the beehive. It was a delicacy to him, but he wasn't greedy. For a long time in the future, that would be the little bear's food reserve. B. Ao Daisai usually ate some food left behind by humans when he was hungry. Anyway, it could fill his stomach and was nutritious. Night gradually came. The forest, which had a huge difference in temperature between day and night, suddenly became chilly. The newborn baby peacock didn't have fur to keep him warm. The surface of his skin was invaded by the cold. He couldn't help but curl up and chirp at the same time. Ao Daisai heard the call and quickly returned to the nest. He used the soft fluff on his abdomen to warm the baby. Xiao Qixi slept after eating. During this time, his body was developing rapidly. The next day, a layer of thin fluff grew on the surface of his skin. The fetal hair on his head and back had already dried. Now it was fluffy and cute. However, because there were only 2 tufts of hair on his body, he looked very smart. Xiao Qixi. What made him depressed was not the smart hairstyle, but that he pooped in the nest. This was what happened. When he woke up in the morning, Ao Daisai fed him another meal. He seemed to think that he ate too little and forced a mouthful of food into his mouth. Xiao Qixi swallowed the food with difficulty. Then, he felt his stomach swell. Before he had time to think about what happened, the smell of feces spread in the nest. At this moment, Xiao Qixi realized that he had just pooped in the nest. What kind of large-scale social suicide scene was this? Embarrassing. Although he had been partners with Ao Daisai for many years, Xiao Qixi felt very awkward when she saw him in such a distressed state. Sorry, he apologized. He had accidentally polluted the environment. Ao Daisai would be the one to clean up the nest. He had caused trouble for her again. Why did he have to apologize? Ao Daisai did not understand. Before this, he had been staring at the pile of feces that was polluting the environment. In his mind, it was a good thing that Yolashanda was excreting normally. This way, he would not have to worry about her digestive system being unhealthy. Ao Daisai did not even blink when such a thing happened. He He moved the little guy to the side and used his claws to grab the thatch and threw it out of the nest. Usually, when he had nothing to do, he would pile up some spare thatch nearby. When he came back, he would bring back a bunch of thatch and dry it as a mattress at the bottom. Xiao Qishi felt that he was doing these things. She felt complicated and emotional. To be honest, Ao Daisai was like a good father who was changing the baby's diapers. After cleaning up the nest, Ao Daisai stared at the baby's eggshell and fretted. This eggshell was useless and should be thrown away. However, Yelishanda was the only peacock in the nest. He looked lonely. Ao Daisai did not want to throw away his eggshell for the time being. He wanted to leave the eggshell to accompany him when he was not around. A baby's life was very boring. After eating, he would sleep. In summary, it was eating, drinking, pooping, and sleeping. Little did they know that such a normal daily life was very rare for humans. Accidentally, this little peacock lived for more than 48 hours, and it looked like there was nothing wrong with it. It could eat, sleep, and poo. The white peacock had to change the thatch in the nest 3 or 4 times a day. It was very busy. What happened? How did 48 hours pass in the blink of an eye? The main thing was that they were so engrossed in reading that they forgot the time. Now, everyone quickly looked through the records to see what happened in the 48 hours. This was a textbook process of raising a baby. Who knows, there might be a major breakthrough after careful study. Several professors studied what happened in the 48 hours through the night. However, they found that it was very ordinary. There did not seem to be anything special about it. If there was anything special about it, it would be that the living environment of this little peacock was not very good. The ultraviolet light outside was too strong, and the temperature difference between day and night was too big. It could not be compared to the well-built environment of the peacock garden. Professor Han smiled bitterly. It could not be that the cruel environment had taken effect, so there must be something special that they missed. They observed it carefully. When this little peacock was born, it was as weak as the other peacocks. However, after 2 days of exposure to the sun and rain in the wild, it looked more and more lively. On the morning of the 3rd day, people caught a very exciting scene. Xiao Qishi woke up in the morning and was hungry. It lay in the nest and chirped, urging Ao Daisai to go out and find food for it. However, it had a small appetite. After eating a little, it was full again and refused to eat. There was a kind of hunger called your parents think you are hungry. Ao Daisai did not seem to think that 2B pupae would be enough. He persevered and gently touched Yelishanda's pink little mouth. Open your mouth and eat a little more. But I'm already full. Xiao Qishi mumbled and turned its mouth to one side. Its refusal was obvious. You eat it yourself. This was the baby food of the little cutie. How could Ao Daisai eat it? He stood for a moment, then lowered his head and asked again, Do you want to eat it? It had only been a few seconds. Xiao Qishi thought to herself. Even if I'm a straightforward person, I won't be hungry so quickly. No, you eat it. I don't eat this kind of food. In the end, Ao Daisai seemed to have made up his mind. He asked with a slightly aggressive face, Open your mouth. Not only was his language demanding, but his actions were also very tough. Xiao Qishi could only raise its head and accept the food with tears in its eyes. The author has something to say. Researchers have discovered the truth of raising peacocks. Chapter 164. Researchers were particular about scientific feeding when raising little peacocks. When a little peacock showed that it was full, they would definitely not dare to force it. Everyone knew that forcing it would cause its stomach to explode. But this white peacock was not a human. Everyone watched as he forced the little peacock to eat another big mouthful. The poor little peacock was fed until tears welled up in its eyes. The shrill cries that came out of its throat were different from when it was hungry and begging for food. When it was hungry and asked for food, the little peacock raised its head and opened its mouth. The translation was, I want to eat, I want to eat. Hurry up and feed me. When it swallowed the last mouthful, the sound it made was, No, I'm stuffed to death. However, it was useless even if he shouted until his throat was hoarse. The white peacock, who was exceptionally tough when it came to feeding, did not show any mercy. It directly held the food in its mouth and stuffed it into the little peacock's throat. This little peacock would die from eating too much. Since the little peacock's condition had been stable for the past 2 days, Professor Han, who had not returned to the peacock garden for a long time, finally packed up and went back to rest. At the same time, he also took a look at the last egg that was difficult to hatch. That egg was the object of their attention from the beginning. When they first tested it, there were a total of 2 eggs that were not in good condition. One was stolen by the white peacock. Now that it had been successfully hatched, there was only 1 egg left in the peacock garden that was not in good condition. Its weakness caused the female peacock to obviously give up on it and did not help it hatch. Professor Han went back and prepared to manually hatch the egg today. After taking a hot shower and shaving off his beard, he saw everyone in the group discussing the white peacock feeding the little peacock. He was numb. What was wrong with this white peacock? Wasn't it fine 2 days ago? It actually had such a hobby. 2 days ago, it was fine because Yolashanda was relatively weak. It was as if she would disappear with a touch. Ao Daisai was so afraid of losing her that he was very careful. Moreover, it was common knowledge that a weak body would eat less. Finally, these 2 days, Yolashanda got better. However, the food she ate was as little as before. This was not right. Ao Daisai had turned into a feeding maniac. He was not deliberately making things difficult for Xiao Qishi. He just knew that Xiao Qishi was picky and lazy. If he allowed her to continue being willful, her body would not be healthy. Humans were scared witless, but Xiao Qishi was fine. He was not particularly full. He did refuse to eat when he was 70% full. He was lazy and afraid of pooping. Seeing the little bear pooping again and burying its head deep in its bowels, Ao Daisai had a smile in her eyes. She seemed to understand the reason behind its laziness. In human terms, this was called wanting to save face. Don't feel ashamed. It's human nature, Yolashanda. Ao Daisai comforted her and then quickly cleaned up the nest. Xiao Qishi felt that Ao Daisai's Chinese was so good that she could not refute him sometimes. After eating his fill, he bathed in the morning sun. His body felt warm and comfortable. The little peacock also knew how to yawn. Xiao Qishi did not know that although he lived in the wild, there were cameras around him. He yawned without caring about his image and even smacked his lips. He was a little thirsty. The cubs did not need to eat too much water, but it did not mean that they did not need to drink. Ao Daisai went out to throw the rubbish and came back with clear water in his mouth. Of course, it was not clear after passing through his mouth. However, it did not matter. Yolashanda had eaten his saliva all these years. Xiao Qishi took the water in a daze. His mouth became moist, and this made him feel comfortable. In the peacock garden, the people brought the unhatched peacock egg back to the laboratory. Unfortunately, the egg had not matured yet. It had been 30 days since it hatched. This was a congenital problem. Researchers had always believed that the quality of the egg would not change when it was born in the female peacock's stomach. After all, they had tried artificial incubation before. The condition of the egg did not change during the process. A congenital defect was a congenital defect. No matter how hard they tried to fix it, it was useless. However, the stolen egg changed their understanding. It was clearly an egg with poor quality. How could it hatch into such a healthy little peacock? Looking at the egg that was useless whether it was broken or not, Professor Han sighed deeply. A ridiculous thought flashed through his mind. If the white peacock had stolen 2 eggs, would they still be alive? Professor Han shook his head at the thought. This was too ridiculous. How is that possible? He thought that example was just a coincidence. It cannot be the norm. This kind of unconventional thinking was too wrong. Their attitude towards research should be strict. That night, they helped break the last egg. As expected, the other party was too weak and had no chance of survival. Everyone in the garden had a premonition, so they were not too surprised. However, they were all very sad. The atmosphere was gloomy. Professor, he was more open-minded about this kind of thing. No matter what, he was still an open-minded person. Little Han, take it easy. Think about it. Our last litter was already pretty good. 3 of them survived, including the one in the wild, although they did not know how long it would have lived. Hopefully, the white peacock would stop playing tricks. Thank you, old he. I'm fine. Just reminiscing. Professor Han calmed himself down and quickly changed the topic. Other than the little peacock that had died prematurely, he was still thinking about the one that had just been born. Do you think we should bring the one in the wild back? Professor, he was taken aback. What? You also think that the white peacock is not reliable? It was not that. The other party was very meticulous. Professor Han, who had watched the whole process, had the right to speak. However, the peacock egg originally belonged to the garden. We cannot let it grow in the wild. That will be detrimental to its future. You should know that there are no green peacocks outside. It did not matter if the little peacock was a male or a female. It would definitely want to mate when it grew up. If it grew up in the wild, it could only crossbreed with a blue peacock. It was not that the 2 professors looked down on blue and green peacocks. If there were not so few green peacocks, they would not have meddled. I understand what you're saying. Professor, he nodded in agreement. Every surviving green peacock will be a great help to the breeding industry. Do you think we should bring it back now or later? Professor Han was conflicted. He was worried that he would not be able to raise it well if he brought it back now, but he was also worried that the white peacock would play tricks on him if he brought it back later. It was too difficult. Professor, he did not know what to choose either. How about he look at the surveillance footage first? The sun was shining brightly in the wild. Green trees provided shade and covered half of the spacious peacock's nest. Currently, the little peacock was sleeping in the nest. His stomach was bulging. The workers at the garden had never dared to feed the little peacock to this extent. They advocated small but frequent meals. After all, the little peacock's stomach was fragile. However, small but frequent meals did not promote excretion. Ao Daisai was a purebred wild animal. It believed that eating more and excreting more was a sign of health. In other words, Ao Daisai's parenting philosophy was in major conflict with the gardens. Babies could be taken care of more carefully, but not too carefully. Otherwise, their immune system would deteriorate. For example, it was better to eat all natural food. Living in an environment did not necessarily mean that there were no germs. Actually, it was better to be exposed to germs and not get sick easily. A few years ago, the laboratory still advocated sterile breeding. They firmly believed that advanced technology could solve all problems. The truth was the green peacocks raised in sterile rooms had very weak immune systems and did not reproduce well. Therefore, they were quickly changed to wild breeding. It was considered semi-artificial breeding. The situation had improved slightly. So, was it really because the environment was too good? Should they all be released into the wild? Perhaps in the future, but obviously not now. It was a sunny day. Suddenly, dark clouds floated over and it began to rain in the forest. The people watching the surveillance footage were nervous. It was raining. The rain was not very clean. The air pollution had been deeply ingrained in people's hearts. As soon as it rained, people became afraid. At that moment, the lithe white peacock stood by the nest. It spread its wings to block the rain for the baby. He even took the opportunity to shake his head and take a shower. It had been too long since Ao Daisai had a clean freak. It had been anticipating the arrival of rain. Of course, it cannot be too heavy. The gorgeous feathers of the peacock shook his head and drew a beautiful arc in the air. Looking at it at a normal speed, the white peacock's bath was clean and tidy. Whether it was tidying up its feathers or washing its face, it revealed a very valiant style. It was as if the wind, frost, rain, and snow of nature were nothing to him. It did not affect his life in the wild at all. He had become one with the world. His wild and healthy beauty occupied the entire camera lens. His red eyes occasionally fixed on the camera lens. That leisurely look poured his soul into him. It refreshed people's old impression of peacocks that were not smart. The most intelligent bird was the crow. Next were the magpies and parrots. Peacocks were nowhere to be seen. The white peacock in front of them had some intelligence in his eyes and disdain for things. He had the temperament of an outlaw. The group was exclaiming that his maternal instinct was so good that he would block the rain for the baby peacock. This was not the awareness of a male. He looks so handsome standing by the nest with his wings open. Other white peacocks can only be described as beautiful and fairy-like, but this one has a kind of cool and handsome feeling. Sparrows don't talk much. They steal eggs when they say so. He even used a plastic bag to steal. This thief has personality. He wants to be a father so badly. He obviously wants to be a mother. I want to post a slow-motion video of him bathing. He looks so good when he shakes his head. Haha. Watching the noble young master bathe. Xiao Qixi knew that it was raining. The raindrops hit Ao Daisai's feathers and made patter sounds. Occasionally, a trace of water splashed in and landed on his fluffy feather like mist. Fortunately, the sun did not rain for long. It seemed to be specially used for Ao Daisai to bathe. Not long after he finished bathing, the rain stopped. The sun continued to shine, and the baby peacock's feather quickly dried. Its whole body was yellow and tender. The only flaw was that it grew sparsely. Xiao Qixi was very happy. The rain stopped. At the same time, she asked curiously, Ao Daisai, can you tell me what I look like now? Ao Daisai took a long bath and was in a good mood. He stood by the side and shook his wings. The sun shone through the white feathers. It was so ethereal. The garden's account would often post videos of other peacocks. Some were green peacocks that were shot in their own garden, and some were wild blue peacocks that were shot when they were patrolling the mountains. Only this one left a deep impression. Very quickly, someone recognized that he was the one that had wandered into the garden from the wild. Damn, the garden is really shameless. Are they keeping him in captivity? Seeing similar comments, the staff immediately replied and explained, this friend is not keeping him in captivity. The garden did not keep him in captivity. This was shot in the wild. With this, the guarantors could rest assured. No matter what the purpose was, keeping him in captivity would not be accepted. The white peacock is really beautiful. Did the photographer only shoot the upper body on purpose to shoot a high-definition close-up? But we also want to see the gorgeous big tail. Please update the big tail. Some netizens noticed that this time, only the upper body was shot in the video. Although the crest and eyes were very beautiful, why did the big tail not appear? Yes, we want to see the gorgeous big tail of the white peacock. It would be even better if we could see it spread its tail. Very few people have seen a wild white peacock spreading its tail, right? There were many in the zoo, and they could be seen at any time. However, people who had been to the zoo knew that no matter how good the environment was or how careful the staff was, the temperament of the wild and the captive was different. The white peacocks in the zoo had a delicate and weak feeling, unlike the wild white peacock in the video. When the other party showed off his tail, it felt very strong. The red eyes glanced over, and there seemed to be a murderous aura. The staff in the garden smiled bitterly. It was not that they did not want to shoot the gorgeous lower body of the handsome white peacock, but the lower body was protecting the nest. Wasn't it to let everyone know that this white peacock had a baby in its nest? This matter could not be announced yet. Otherwise, it would not only be the problem of the white peacock's cool image collapsing. There would also be people who suspected that this was a high-tech combination of malicious deception. If that happened, the garden would not be able to explain themselves, even if there were 100 mouths. Staff, listen to me. We really did not combine them. He became more proficient in walking. At the same time, the fur on his body became thicker. He, who could walk nimbly, was not satisfied with strolling in the nest. He often climbed up the edge of the nest to see the outside world. Peacocks' nests were usually built on dry ground. The edge of the nest was not too high from the ground. However, Ao Daisai did not like to be too close to the ground. He was the first peacock to build a nest that was relatively high. Xiao Qixi stood on the edge of the nest and looked down. He only felt dizzy and almost suspected that his fear of heights was about to act up. Really, Why did Ao Daisai build the nest so high? He vaguely remembered that the white peacock was a variant of the blue peacock. Its flying ability was not very good. However, Ao Daisai refreshed his understanding. He flew around in front of him every day. There were signs that his flying skills were getting better and better. He was even more proficient in the use of gliding. Yes, the average white peacock's flying ability was not very good. However, this did not include Ao Daisai. After all, the reason why the white peacock's flying ability was not very good was the result of evolution. Therefore, it must have been able to fly in the past with complete wings. Ao Daisai, who had intelligence, would subconsciously train his flying skills. He would not let his wings look good. Ordinary white peacocks, who did not live in a stressful environment, would never consciously train their flying ability. Not only did Xiao Qishi find it strange that Ao Daisai was flying around, but humans also found it strange that this white peacock was flying around. Why did he fly so well? What happened to the species restriction? The green peacock that was good at flying was just SOSO. After carefully comparing the early videos and the later videos, Professor Han said, he seems to be deliberately training himself. If it was not for the fact that he had to stay by the nest every day, his progress would be faster. It was too amazing. The evolution of a species did not happen overnight. Now, all the miracles seem to be happening to this white peacock at the same time. People's eyes were firmly fixed on him. Even the precious little fat sparrow in the nest was not that eye-catching. No, it was still eye-catching. The peacock's father flew out to look for food, and this naughty little guy actually climbed up the nest and wanted to go down. Xiao Qishi, slander. I'm clearly shivering up there. I don't even dare to move, let alone talk about going down. He was too small, so he looked very scary from this height. Ao Daisai, who had flown back from the outside, enjoyed the gliding feeling brought by the wind. When he was still a beast on the ground, he felt that birds were very weak. So what if he could fly? When he became a bird, he quickly fell in love with the feeling of flying. Ao Daisai used his intelligence to master the secret of flying at the highest speed with the least consumption. Chapter 166. There were no snakes around. For a moment, Ao Daisai thought that Xiao Qishi was wrong. He did not think that Xiao Qishi would be lying. When he calmed down and sniffed the air, he also felt the faint smell of blood and the sound of a reptile crawling through the leaves. There were indeed snakes nearby, but they moved slowly. It seemed to be looking for prey and had not found the peacock's nest so quickly. Ao Daisai was relieved and comforted the frightened baby. Don't worry, the snake is far away from you. Xiao Qishi was relieved. He was indeed worried that he would be swallowed by the snake. It was not a good thing to have snakes around. Otis's eyes flickered as he fed the cubs. A fierce look flashed across his eyes. After the fat sparrow finished eating, he fell asleep. Otis fed him some water and then went out to kill the snake that was looking for food. At first, Otis thought that it would be a big snake. He did not expect it to be an ordinary red-chained snake. Although it had not hurt Alisanda yet, Otis still pecked it to death. It was easy to do. He just needed to land on the ground and extend his neck to peck at the snake's weak spot. After the snake died, Otis tossed it to a faraway place and threw it away. He did not allow anything to threaten Alisanda. The white peacock left the nest again. No one knew what he was going to do. Was he not going to look after the baby? Fortunately, he came back soon. 2 days later, the little peacock's condition was better. He did not walk unsteadily anymore, but he was still charmingly naive. It seemed that he would sit down and not be able to walk any time. Daddy Peacock was really a sinner. One morning, when the little peacock woke up, Daddy Peacock let the little peacock climb onto his back. He brought the little peacock away from the nest. The white peacock was exceptionally beautiful in the camera. However, his figure soon disappeared from the camera's range. The staff panicked. Were they leaving? Yes, Ao Daisai was going to bring his baby out to find a more suitable place to live. However, he might not be able to find her immediately, so he brought Alisanda along. At night, They might even return to their old nest to spend the night. In the early morning, the forest was misty, and the grassland by the lake was green and full of vitality. Under the direct sunlight, the water droplets on the grass seemed to be plated with a layer of colorful shell. Ao Daisai put down the little guy on his back and let him try the feeling of standing on solid ground. Xiao Qixi was overjoyed when she stepped on the grassy ground with her little paws that were only half a month old. She ran around like crazy as soon as she got off the ground. Then he used his stomach to stop the car, nestled by Ao Daisai's feet, and asked, "Oh, Daisai, Ao Daisai, are we out for a walk?" Ao Daisai glanced at him and said, "No, we are looking for a new place to live." Xiao Qixi nodded. That was true.